4?
This is it.
All right, well, we can call to order, but they have the choice to request.
There's a little disclaimer we can put on the email to say that. Madam Chair, you ready to proceed?
Okay.
Yep.
I think I would have this down now. Okay. Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to the September 10th meeting of the City of Tampa Variance Review Board. From my left, the members of the board are
Brian Fry. Todd Foltz.
Aaron Murphy.
I'm Anna Walrath. Also in attendance from legal, we have Kamaria Pettis-Mackel. From Development Coordination, Lisa Middleton. Natural Resources, well, Stephen Eister, imagine that. And is Laura here? No, okay, all right. So there's some procedural rules we need for you to follow. When your case number and the petitioner's name are called, please approach this podium. When you approach the podium, please state your name, address, and confirm that you have been sworn in. The petitioner or its agent will have 10 minutes to make a presentation. All other persons or participants wishing to speak will have 3 minutes. Then the petitioner will have 5 minutes additional for rebuttal if needed. Time periods as stated are kept by the board. Any information such as pictures or plans that have not previously submitted as part of the petition and you intend to submit for consideration in your support of your petition must be individually presented and accepted by the board. After acceptance by the board, you must submit the item to staff for it to be entered and made part of the permanent record, that dreaded permanent record. The board bases its decision on competent and substantial evidence which is submitted and which meets the criteria required by the city's Code of Ordinances. Please be sure to clearly state your hardship criteria during your presentation. A majority of the board is needed to approve your variance. As you can see, there are only 4 of us here today, which is a quorum, but there are some options if you want to, if you have issue with only 4 of us being here, because we do have a 7-person board. Okay, the variance granted by the board will be only for what is shown on the site plan and will be in compliance with any terms or conditions stated by the board. All other city codes will need to be met. If the case is approved, your variance will expire 2 years from the date of the decision. If your case is continued, it will either be continued to next month's agenda or the next available position on the VRB agenda. If the case is denied, you may wish to have the Variance Review Board's decision appealed by the City Council. You must file a petition for review of the board's decision within 14 days of the board's written decision. You will not be able to pull any permits until the 14-day review period has passed. Your cooperation in ensuring that this meeting is run smoothly is greatly appreciated. Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the August meeting?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Okay. At this time, I will ask legal staff to confirm whether there are any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest.
Good afternoon, good evening. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the board members please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are on the agenda?
No.
Thank you. Additionally, will the board members please confirm whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are on the agenda?
No.
No.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda that the staff wishes to address? Stephen?
There have been no changes to the agenda, but item 4 for your review is the approval of the new rules and procedures. We can do that now, or we can do that at the end of the hearing. Your preference?
I don't think that everyone who's seated here needs to necessarily sit through those, so my suggestion would be to do it at the end.
Perfect.
Okay? And at this time, I would ask a staff member to conduct the swearing in. Please, if you're going to speak, make sure that you participate.
swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, so there are only 4 members available today. Any applicant has the right to request that their case be continued until we have a minimum of 5 members. Is anyone here for a case where that would be a problem? Seeing none, I think we can go ahead and proceed.
Good evening, Board. The first case on the agenda tonight is VRB-24-26. This was a continued case from last month's hearing. The owner and applicant is Jose Ramirez and Brian DeCosmo. The property address is 2704 West Tyson. The property is owned single-family residential RS50. The request is for the removal of one grand tree in the center of the lot, and it falls under section 27-284.2.5. This is a map of the site. You can see the subject parcel outlined in a red dash. This is the information on the grand tree. It's one live oak, 40-inch DBH with a canopy measurement of 65 by 65. The condition rating is B6. The mitigation for this tree would be 18 type 1 mitigation trees. These are some photos of the tree. It was also provided to you a memo highlighting the height of this lowest limb, which is around 14 feet. This is a survey of the site. The tree circled in red is the one we are looking at today. That's been requested through the variance. The tree in green is going to be preserved. This is the proposed house. You can see the proposed house falls within the setback, but the 40-inch tree falls within the garage area. The 43-inch tree to the north is not being impacted by this proposed plan. This is alternative site plan 1, which shows a house outside of the tree protection zone. You can see it gives the full 20-foot radius. This house proposed is around 1,500 square feet and is 1 story. But as you all also can see in the green highlighted box, that is the proposed driveway. And you can see that the driveway meets up to the trunk of the tree. Alternative site plan 2, very similar to the first, but this utilizes the rear yard setback reduction down to 12 feet. This allows for a larger house, but still presents many of the same conflicts, such as the driveway being less than a foot off the trunk of the tree. This is an outline of the buildable areas on site that are outside of the 20-foot protective radius, like shown in the proposed plans. As you can see, the 20-foot radius kind of splits the lot in half due to the setbacks and things like that. And then these are the development review comments. The natural resources found at consistent conditions. This is an explanation and supplement to the memo that was also provided to you. Transportation found at consistent, wastewater consistent, water consistent with conditions that they would have to handle the water hookup at the time of permitting. Right-of-way found at consistent, stormwater consistent, and then TECO consistent with conditions. This is a summary of 27284.2.5, the conditions for grand tree removal. And then required conditions, the site will comply with chapters 5, 17.5, 21, 22, 23, and 26, and all technical standards of the City of Tampa Code and chapter 27, unless waived specific to this request. And I will be available for any questions.
Thank you. The applicant, come forward, please.
Good evening. My name is Brian DeCosmo. I am the applicant for the BRB 2426. My address is 235 High Top Drive, Fletcher, North Carolina. I have been sworn in. I know we presented last time, I guess, does the board prefer that we go through the entire presentation again, or just the highlights, or just start over?
I think generally.
Probably do the
That's right,
highlights.
I'll just recap and just go from there. Essentially, what we're looking to do is develop the lot, and build a new structure on it, as the request shows. The tree, as it's configured on the lot, makes it very difficult to even access the lot for building a structure in the back. I know there were some comments last meeting about that the property can be built into the back. And while this is on the surface probably very easy to make that statement, but according to the city code, this would actually be very difficult. As Stephen had shown, the canopy and the 20-foot protective radius of the tree basically almost touches property line side to side. So even to build a property, build a structure in the back of the lot would be difficult because it would create substantial damage to the tree, just from a standpoint of construction traffic, trucks, dumpsters, that kind of a thing, as they brought materials into the back along the side, would actually substantially impact the roots on the tree. And here's a picture of the tree as Stephen had shown from the rear of the lot, looking forward. The only access point is here to avoid the protective radius of the tree that's in the front, and all the materials and traffic for the construction would come down the side. This limb here may be impacted from just the height, from bringing in trucks with the crane to set trusses, equipment, heights may exceed 14 feet, might not, but it could considerably damage the tree. And then also referencing City Code 284.2.4, for other construction activity that could potentially harm the tree or create hazards that the tree could be removed for protected trees. 284.2.4, section 1 of table 284.2.4 says that construction activity could potentially, trees that are protected could potentially be removed if we cannot provide a minimum protective radius around the tree during construction, which we would not be able to do for this tree on either side, as traffic would be coming into the rear of the lot to bring materials and build. The same table, section 7, the protected tree would prevent necessary vehicle access to proposed building, and the protected radius could not be provided in the long term to put a driveway in, no matter where you set a driveway in on this side, because to avoid the 43-inch tree that's in the front of the lot, to put even a 10-foot wide driveway would encroach on the protected radius by 10 feet on that side of the tree, as far as that's concerned. Then also the city code 27-284.2.5, table 284.2.5, has several stipulations on when a protected tree could be removed for the hardship that is being presented. Under construction, other construction activities, it states that that the tree may be rendered hazardous due to impacts of certain construction activity. There are 3 criteria underneath that section. Section A and B have to be met, or Section A and C have to be met in the event to create a hardship. Section A states that proposed building footprint of a building that adheres to standard setbacks, yard and height requirements of subject zoning would impact structural stability and condition of the tree. As shown on the site plan for the proposed, not the alternate, but the proposed site plan, that if you did what we call for South Tampa, a fairly standard structure, this would actually not only just impact the tree, it would actually sit over the top of the tree from standard setbacks as part of the first condition on that chart. Subsection C of that same table says that the other part that would have to be met would be applicant has demonstrated that there is no other reasonable reconfiguration of the proposed development, even though we have shown a reasonable reconfiguration of the development, it would still impact, or would still not meet criteria for table 284.2.4 that we couldn't comply to create a protective radius of the tree during construction. So the hardship comes from that there's not gonna be any easy or reasonable way to access the back of that lot without severely impacting the health and stability of that tree during construction. Even with the setback of 20 feet from behind the tree, when you're working on the construction site, there'd be no place to set materials, have cars parked, because Tyson Avenue doesn't have any street parking. It's a very narrow street, so that, you know, and even if you tried to control people pulling in there, you would have people pulling in and parking in that restricted zone, because there'd be no way to protect the radius of that tree. So as shown, we're, you know, and then also there's been suggestions about setting the house even further back from the comments from last meeting. If we went back, you know, 8 feet or 10 feet from the rear setback, that also creates some drainage issues and flooding issues that have not been addressed and could be potentially hazardous to the neighbors. I know that's been a kind of a hot topic here in the city after the last rainstorms. To control runoff and that sort from that far back in the property would be very difficult to control runoff and bring water forward from that lot, because the lot is fairly flat, almost completely level, to bring stormwater forward from the back of the lot of almost 140 feet. So with that said, we're requesting a variance based on the issues and the conditions of the lot, which are fairly self-evident. And then the other concern that we have is that setting the house so far back on the lot would be kind of a non-typical or non-conforming kind of a build in the area. And also would, you know, it would also create that you have a structure that's right up against the fence line of the neighbors to the rear, if you will, so that we, you know, looming in their backyard, if you will. Trying to be respectful of the neighbors to the rear as well. So that's our basis for our hardship, and then also the basis for the request for the tree removal, so we can create a structure on the lot as it sits. Thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation?
I'm sorry?
Does that conclude your
It does. It
presentation?
concludes
Okay. Anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this particular case?
Good evening. My name's Allison Day, 2403 West Chicago. I have been sworn in. And I'm going to share a letter that was written by another TTAG member about the tree. She did a little bit of investigating, and she says, there is room on this property for a house and both of the exceptionally healthy and valuable live oak trees. This is possible because the owners tore down a house that was happily coexisting with these trees. They may not be able to build a McMansion, but no one is owed a McMansion. The same restrictions for building a larger house were in place when they chose to demolish the old house. That is the definition of a self-created hardship. Also, they could ask for a reduction of rear setbacks to increase the house size. This variance does not meet the legal standard for hardship. Therefore, you should deny this request and protect Tampa's declining canopy, which could also help remove some of that flood water. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Jackson Haney. I live at 3014 West Harborview Avenue, and I'm a member of the Tampa Tree Advocacy Group, and I have been sworn in. It is time to start thinking out of the box in Tampa, particularly way past time to start thinking about building something other than the big white boxes we see everywhere now in favor of saving Tampa's remaining grand live oak trees. These trees are very valuable, especially these grand live oaks, which are the workhorses of our tree canopy. It is time for the new builds that show grace to these beautiful trees, returning the favor of the benefits that each one of these live oaks gives to our community on a daily basis. Free carbon storage, free shade, oxygen, a much-needed place for wildlife habitat, and something of note lately with our 5 p.m. storms, significant stormwater interception. Yes, these trees work very hard for us. In this instance, the property owner knew the tree was there when they bought the property. What can be built behind that grand live oak? What lot lines can be changed to accomplish this? What new construction methods can be used to ensure that stormwater runoff goes to the street, as the developer was saying? What permeable materials and new building materials can be used to save this tree, which is rated, by the way, a B6. It's a very healthy, excellent tree. What I heard earlier from the applicant, that the trees, they seem to want the tree to pay for everything that's wrong. you know, like, we can't get the workers there, we can't get the building materials there, we can't do this and that because of the tree. I think that that's something that can be worked around if you really want to save the tree. From what I saw in the proposed site plan, to me, it looks like, you know, the front can be maybe a 1-story instead of 2-story. Maybe it could be 2 to 3 stories towards the back in order to save the tree. With regard to the driveway, maybe permeable material. We have a grand oak on our street that has permeable material all around it, and it's still alive, and people pull in and out of that driveway all the time. And also, you know, no one is really owed a garage or a pool. They are, you know, a home is one thing, but being owed a garage is an entirely different thing. So I'm really asking that you save this beautiful B6 rated tree. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Barbara Ramirez, 5403 South Russell Street, and I am the owner of the property and the tree. And I would just like to correct something that a person before me said. We've owned the property for probably 20, 22 years. When we purchased the property, there was no house, no structure on it. Originally, there was a quadruplex that extended over 2 pieces of property. The triplex was remaining and is still there on Tyson. The 4th piece of the quadruplex was removed. And at that point, we purchased the property. It adjoins our current home, and we bought the property at that time. We've cared for the tree for 20 years, but now we would like to develop the property, and we've cared for the tree. We paid taxes on the lot, and I just would like it to have a fair shot at being able to do something with the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is John Grandoff. My address is 5300 Bayshore Boulevard. I want to speak in opposition to the request. But before I have my time taken, I would like to go a couple procedural matters with the staff to make sure that the application is correct. Mr. Eister, in the code, you're required to provide a report as to whether the structure can be reasonably reconfigured to save the tree. The last report I saw, you stated that the tree was in the middle of the lot. Do you have a subsequent report since you issued that report?
So since the findings in the record of Acela with the consistent to conditions findings, an additional memo was drafted to explain each site plan and the condition, to supplement the presentation today with the exact numbers from each plan.
Do you have that memo?
Yeah, I can provide you a copy of that memo.
The memo's not available on Acela. So I'd like to have time to read the memo, make sure it comports with the code before we begin.
I'm sorry, you're saying you're trying to make a determination on whether or not it complies with the code?
I don't think, I want to see his report. He's required to file a report 30 days after the filing of the application.
You're just asking to see the, have time to review it.
I want to read the report because the application is incomplete on Acela, and I have a right to see that.
And then this memo is basically a copy of the presentation.
Okay.
And it breaks down each.
All right, this memo is dated today. So I'd like to have a brief moment to read this memo, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. I think it's part of the package now. You didn't get one? Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I have some further questions before we begin because the memorandum from Mr. Eister says, quote, "The grand tree is in the middle of the lot." How do you know that?
So, Mr. Randolph, now, can you start, your time is starting. Thank you. You have the pleasure if you want to ask the board for additional time, but your time is starting.
Okay, well, I'm gonna need additional time because
Once we get to that
I
point.
need to inquire of Mr. Ister because I think his report's deficient.
Once we get to that point.
Okay. You want me to give my case in chief now?
Your public comment, yes.
Okay. The Ramirez's purchased this property for $125,000 in 2002. The tree was there. They also requested the removal of 2 trees in 2015, which were granted by Kathy Beck, the administrator of the tree department. The application on file has never been signed or notarized by Mr. DeCosmo. I submit to you that it is incomplete and cannot be considered tonight. However, you could take his oath tonight and cure that problem. The arborist report concludes that a variance is necessary. That is wrong. A variance is not necessary tonight because you're being asked to exercise power to remove the tree. You're not considering a hardship variance. He can present a hardship variance in a second part of his presentation to prove that he can't fit the tree there. But this is not a variance hearing as to the removal of the tree. And we don't have to design the house for him. He has to prove to you that all the criteria have been met to take the tree, or he has to prove to you in the alternative that he cannot get a variance to put the tree behind, put the house behind the tree. Now, in 1931, the Sanborn map was prepared. There's the property on the Sanborn map as platted in Ballast Point. And in 1976, as recently as 1976, here is the house or property or triplex, quadplex, that was on the property. I took a picture of that this afternoon. The corner of this house next door is right there. And now I'm looking back towards the property. You can see the arching branches. He can get a truck in there. Now, I'd like to talk to Mr. Ister about his report. Will you hold my time, please?
That's a part of your time, Mr. Grandal.
No. I get to question him.
That's fine, but you can ask for additional time.
May I request an additional time, please?
Does anyone have any objection?
I think you saw time.
I would like to put maybe
And Mr. Ister, your report says that the grand tree is in the middle of the lot. Please show me where it is in the middle of the lot.
How much additional time? Just make a motion on how much
Okay.
additional
You
time.
guys wanna?
The distance of the lot,
Provide additional time.
and show me in the lot.
Hold on 1 second, please.
I move that we provide an additional 2 minutes for Mr. Grandolph.
Second.
Any objections? Okay. Is
All in
that-
favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Can you just put additional 2 minutes on hold? Thank you.
So the lot as mentioned is 146 or 143. So if we look at, this is the front setback of 20.
No, it's not. What does that say?
Okay. We're looking 155 on one side and 146 on the other side, 143.
What's the distance from the front line to the tree? I don't
Okay.
care about the sidelines, that line.
Okay, so we got 20, 40, 50. No, this is a 20-foot radius too, so it's 60.
What scale are you losing?
So each protective radius is 20 feet.
I want to know the distance from the front lot line to the tree, and I want to know from the distance from the tree to the back lot line.
Okay.
They should be the same.
So 60 feet and 80 feet.
Is that in the middle of the lot?
To me, as a
Yes or
reference,
no? Is it in the middle of the lot? No. Yes or no? Is it in the
no,
middle of the lot?
it is not in the direct middle of the lot.
Okay, thank you. Sit down, I'm finished.
Okay,
His report is incompetent. It is not in the middle of the lot. Mr. DeCosmo has not proven to you that he can't place this tree, this house behind the tree. He says even, quote, "I can reduce the rear yard, however, drainage issues and flooding issues that have not been addressed." He even admits he hadn't addressed them. So he's telling you right now to take it for his word, it's gonna be a drainage and flooding problem to have a variance. They can get a variance or ask for one from you tonight or another time to put the house in the back. He hasn't done that. He hasn't met his burden. I don't have to design the house for him. He needs to show you he cannot build it through a variance.
Does that conclude your presentation?
No, I still have time.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I want to show a couple other things. Pardon me? Have a minute and 4 seconds. No, it says a minute on here.
The clerk is recording the time, and she's said that your time is.
This says 58.
Because they gave you 2 minutes, not 3.
Okay. In summary, the application is seriously deficient, it's not sworn to, so it's out of order, number one. Number two, he has not met the criteria for the removal of the grand tree. And number three, he has not even given you any of the hardship criteria for a setback variance to the rear yard, nor proof that he cannot meet that criteria. I request respectfully that you deny the tree removal. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this? Do note that there are 2 letters of an opposition that were sent. One from Deborah Van Wambecke and Carol Ann Bennett, both in opposition. Okay, questions from the board?
I guess I got a question for Mr. Eister. Refresh my memory of the size lot that this petition would not even need the variance to remove the tree.
Yeah, so this lot does not qualify under a TRZ lot, which is capped at like 6,400 square feet.
Okay.
This lot is over that size due to it being 156 and 146. The max length on a TRZ lot is 135, so it would not qualify under that
Okay, so
stipulation.
it's a few feet too long, and I see it's 49.88 feet wide. Is that considered conforming frontage for one of those lots in that area?
Correct, because of the angle, it is a lot of record, like it's been platted. It hasn't been chopped up beyond what the plat was originally.
Very good. And the limb that's at 14 feet 3 inches, can that limb be removed without having serious damage to the tree?
So let me jump back over so I like to have my photos. So the limb in question is, if you look at the photo on the left, it would be that entire section of the tree. It would be cut, let's see if you can see my mouse. It would have to be cut down here at this connection point, because there's no supporting limb structure there. So you would have this portion left. Just this upper portion, because the canopy is pretty elevated, except for that one large limb.
Okay, so it would have a successful life post removal of that limb?
Yeah, the issue is when you combine the limb removal and the canopy loss, and then you stack that with the construction of the driveway or any pathway to get to the back of the yard, it's gonna have impacts on the tree. You know, we typically, for grand trees, we like to try to keep pavement 10 feet off the trunk. 10 feet off the trunk would push it almost into, they would have no access. So that's kind of, so it's a combination of both canopy loss and root loss kind of made the determination.
Okay. And to address the point of order, do you, in your opinion, believe that your report is sufficient for us to make this type of opinion?
So I believe my report is sufficient. It provides a tree rating. It provides an overall evaluation of the site. The owner also submitted a supplemental arborist report as well that was evaluated for consistency purposes. And that report was found consistent as well with everything I was evaluating. So yes, I do believe I was able to make a full, thorough evaluation of the site and application.
Okay. And using the inference of tree being in the center of the lot's not going to cause any further issue in the future?
No, it will not.
Very good. Thank you.
Question. That driveway doesn't necessarily have to be paved, correct?
It has to be transportation's not here, but I think the definition they use is durable, dustless surface.
Okay,
So it could be pavers, concrete, et cetera.
okay. And I understand their predicament with bringing materials in, but we've also seen materials transferred from a, big truck, flatbed or whatever, to smaller vehicles that would be able to drive. Is that a possibility that we could live with the tree?
It would be hard. Like we're saying, it's 14 feet is the base level of that limb, and that's kind of where it starts to arch over the other property line. It would be tight, and with the compaction back and forth. This lot's not being used right now, so there's no compaction there. So once you start driving over the root zone, which is 20 feet, it's going to be a hard thing to manage over the length of a construction build.
Manage, meaning the contractor would have to oversee that the right,
It'd be hard to keep the soil aerated, keep the mulch layers. It's gonna be a lot of moving parts. And with the tree being in the location it's in, I think it just presents a really difficult lot to develop with it there.
formidable, but not unable to be overcome. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it could be. It would be interesting to see.
Okay. I'm sorry, someone else had a question.
I have one.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So in looking at the site plan showing, there's two different site plans showing alternate site utilization, one using a one-story and then one pushing back-to-back site plan using, I don't know, one or two-story. Both of them seem to still be underneath the canopy of the tree, is that correct?
That is correct. So that red circle that's on the screen now, that is kind of an outline of the canopy.
So my question is, what is the height of that canopy?
So the height of this canopy is outside of that probably outside that 35-foot range. You can see it's pretty tall on this side, just because of the just how the tree grew structurally. So I don't think there'll be any conflicts until they start setting things.
So the question, so you're seeing, do you think that there'd be conflicts during the construction or once the house is in place? So if the house could be sort of grown in that place, it would be
Yeah.
fine. How do you, so I'm concerned with, in order to set trusses or to set vertical things back there, you've got to get something above it to hold it up, a crane,
Correct.
some kind of a high-reach forklift, some type of thing above it, which usually has a clearance at least twice what the height of whatever member you're putting in. So if you're putting in a truss, 10-foot tall truss, you got to have at least 10 foot above that to hold it.
Correct.
Is there clearance to be able to do that?
I don't know what kind of equipment they're going to use, but with your evaluation of 10 foot plus 10 foot plus the height of the house, I don't think they're going to have the clearance or the stability to be able to swing around it because of where it's located.
So in your opinion, would that, so if you're swinging into the canopy of the tree, would you be damaging the tree?
Yeah, because you're going to have broken limbs instead of cut limbs. So if that makes sense, it's kind of like if you get a scratch, it's a lot worse than if it's like a cut.
So
the same thing.
So in order to be able to construct it, would you have to trim the canopy of the tree back, and would that be legal to do such a thing?
You're allowed to remove on a grain tree of this size. A tree could probably handle about 25% canopy loss. With the large limb that's already coming off of it, possibly for clearance, that would probably be your 25%, just with that portion.
In my knowledge of cranes, I don't know that you could actually drive a crane underneath that limb to get it back there. So I don't see any way to develop without taking that limb off. That would be, to me, one of the first things that have to go. Is that, I kind of hear you saying the same thing.
Correct, and that's how I based because I went out to the site, and I had a city, escape kind of as a reference point. And I parked it up front, and I was in the back taking photos forwards. And you can see the clearance is really pretty tight on that site.
So in your opinion, would taking that limb off and then also taking the piece of the canopy off to allow for construction of even a one-story house, would that exceed the 25%?
Yes, because once you do both of those trimmings, this section's now gone, where my mouse is.
Oh, okay.
And then this section would then be gone. So you're left with kind of a half, like a half circle.
Sort of a, yeah, at
And
best
then-
2/3 maybe.
Yeah, and then you have the driveway here. So whatever impacts are caused by that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
No, I mean, it seems to me that just an enormous amount of work would have to go into protecting the integrity of the tree throughout the entire process, because, I mean, my understanding is during construction, there's that netting that's placed around the tree, correct?
Correct.
That establishes that zone. It would seem to me that something in such a small space would be, like, every day would be something that they would have to do to mitigate damage to the tree in the hopes that something doesn't happen, right?
Correct.
But something could.
Yeah, and then, you know, the fencing would have to be taken down and then replaced every day as well, because you can't access the site with the protective radius fencing in place. Because you can see this is the radius, it's a 40-inch tree, and then you have to go 20 feet from the face of the tree all the way around. And with it being a 50-foot wide lot, you got about 2 to 3 feet of clearance on this side, and 2 to 3 feet of, maybe 2 to 3 feet of clearance on that side to get around it without entering the protective radius.
So just to be clear, in your professional opinion, to build anything on this lot would be very difficult to protect the health of this tree.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Mr. Randolph?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Ister issued an opinion.
He's not, I'm sorry, Mario Pettisnackle from the legal department. Mr. Greenoff is not the applicant.
No, he's not.
Okay, may I
Okay.
be heard on the motion, on the matter? I have a
Public comments, have you concluded public comment?
I'm not commenting.
We're,
Have a
right now,
question.
we're in board, questions from the board.
Okay, do you have a question for him?
No, I don't, do you guys?
Okay.
I have a question of you. I'd like to inquire of Mr. Ister, because he's delivered an opinion to the board outside of the case in chief. I have a right to question him as to his opinion.
Mr. Randolph,
Why not?
Mr. Rand, I actually haven't said anything.
Okay.
Mr. Randolph, you've provided your public comment. Mr. Ister answered a question from the board. That's what happened.
He
this
delivered an opinion to Mr. Fry.
afternoon. Okay,
I have a right to inquire as to the basis for his opinion, if the board's gonna consider it as evidence.
will the board like to make a motion to add Mr. Randolph, give him additional time to ask questions of Mr. Ister? That's the pleasure of the board if you desire to have, give him additional time to ask questions.
I don't have a problem with giving him a minute.
I don't have a problem giving him a minute to, but I would ask you to make it productive. And let's-
Yes, it will be
not-
productive.
Okay.
Let's ask about the merits of the
Mr. Randolph
case.
is so concerned about procedure and, you know, everything, crossing every T, dotting every I, but he's willing to jump over all of our consistent procedures,
that's my
which is
problem.
becoming quite frustrating.
That's my
I'm willing to grant you a minute from my perspective, but I would like it to be about the merits of the case, not about who did what about questioning the authority of the board or.
I'm not
or
questioning your
trying to the
authority.
legality
No.
of.
No,
of the-
he,
I'm sorry,
A motion to, can someone want to make a motion to allow Mr. Randolph another minute?
I'll make a motion to allow Mr. Grandoff a minute to ask direct pieces about, comment about the presentation of this case, not about procedure, but about the presentation of the case in point.
I don't know that we can tell him we can't ask a particular question if we give him a minute.
I would ask that he does that, but I'm willing to make a motion to allow him a minute,
Okay,
1 minute.
1 minute. All those in favor?
Let's set me a second.
you need a second for the motion.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize we didn't have one. Someone second the motion? I'll second it. As long as the chair can second the motion.
You're fine.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed?
Well, you've got a tie vote, so
So it doesn't pass.
it does not pass.
Okay. I'm sorry, John. Hopefully, in the closing, we'll get some clarence.
okay, I'll make a note for the record that I'm objecting to Mr. Ister's testimony as an expert in this case. Thank you.
Okay. The owner has a chance for rebuttal at this point.
Well, before we go there, I do have some questions for the owner, for the applicant. Thank you. Come on. During your testimony, we did talk about drainage and how these possible alternates would not have sufficient drainage. Have you done any research on these alternates that would show that there's not sufficient drainage, or were you just speculating it's a possibility?
I didn't say there wasn't sufficient drainage. I said what would happen is the further you go back in the lot, and let me just preface that. I am an expert in building. I've been a general contractor for 25 plus years in the state of Florida and the state of North Carolina. I built in the city of Tampa from 2000 to 2022, strictly residential, in the city. So I think I am qualified to speak as to what would be viable or not viable on the lot. But I know from experience, the further you set a house from the roadside, the harder it is to take stormwater runoff from the rear of the house to the front of the house just because of the constraints of distance. Also, what happens is we go, like Mr. Grandif was suggesting, that we go to an 8 or 10 foot setback. There's almost no place for the water to go except to the neighbor's property in the rear. So with that said, I don't think I'm not a stormwater certified expert or anything, but I have done stormwater runoff and containment for the city of Tampa on residential construction since 2000 until 2022.
Okay, you've never done anything that could move stormwater from the rear of the lot, like a French drain or some sort, to move it out to the street?
It still has to go somewhere.
Right.
When it falls in the French drain, it still has to drain somewhere. And
So
what
in your
happens
experience,
is
you've never been able to move water from the rear of the lot to the front of the lot?
we have, but the further you go, you have to have fall. And so once you get to a certain distance, the dimensions to go downhill, you hit encroachment of groundwater coming up as you hit your drain points. So if you go down 3 or 4 feet, if anyone's ever actually dug a sewer tap in the city of Tampa, you have to call the inspection and take photos of it and send the photos to the inspector so they can see it, because by the time he comes to inspect it, it's full of water because the groundwater encroaching up. So what happens is the drain lines fill with water. If you're more than 2 or 3 feet below grade, the stormwater catches will fill with water, and it does not allow water to run out. If you actually ask any drainage contractor in the city of Tampa, they'll tell you the same thing. And what happens is you need to have at least 1/4 to 1/2 inch of fall per foot as you're running from the back of the home to the front of the house to have drainage come out. And when you're talking about 120 feet, 130 feet from the back corner, if we went to an 8 foot setback, when you start doing a dimensional calculation, you're going to be roughly 1/2 inch per foot. Let's divide that by half, that's 65 feet. That means you're gonna be 65 inches below grade, that's 5 feet.
Okay, and so there's not sufficient grade, then at 5 feet, you'd be below the road?
Not
Or into the water.
logically.
Right.
You'll be, as tall as I am underground with the grading blocks where it catches. So, and then the other question that I'd like to address, or the other comment that was addressed about the crane.
Well, I'm sorry,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the legal
Oh.
department.
Yeah,
Are you
somebody else
still
have questions?
asking questions?
Oh, sorry, okay.
We are still in questions, so,
Okay.
so,
He'll have time for rebuttal once we finish questioning.
yes, do we have any more questions?
You good?
On your alternate site plan, number, I guess it's number 2, that pushes it back the additional to a 12 foot setback. Is your intention to, would that look at a 2-story there as opposed to, because I think the 1-story was only possible within the,
That's actually a 1-story residence as it sat, with being that far underneath the tree canopy, almost 25 feet underneath the tree canopy. It'd be almost impossible to put a 2nd story on a home that close to the tree canopy. As was cited before, if you had to put a crane on the site to lift the trusses up to a 2nd story roof line, the crane would essentially sit on top of the tree. It would, if I may, if you look at the site, to put a 2nd story on that house, the crane would have to sit essentially here, somewhere. And a crane, I don't know if y'all ever looked at a crane that lifts trusses, it's got about a 50-foot boom on it, weighs roughly 10 to 15 tons, and it sits on pedestals that would go into the ground. That would, encroach again, and again, as I was discussing, it would create considerable damage to the root base in that 20-foot radius. And then also the boom wouldn't be enough that you could actually lift the boom up from this point to get a truss up 20 feet. The canopy there is almost 30 feet underneath it at the back, at the far back of it. But if you put a boom that's 20 feet behind the top of the canopy, when you do math or algebra or geometry, as you will, you're not going to get that boom to raise up and get it to go beyond the tree canopy and get out to the tree run. So there's not actually a way to actually put a second story on a house back there unless it was hand carried. And the same thing with the protective radius that's required according to city code on 27-284. If we had a 20-foot radius, you couldn't even transfer materials from a large truck to a small truck and bring it back because you'd still be encroaching on the 20-foot radius. Everything, if you left that tree intact, would have to be hand carried from the road all the way to the back of the lot. Because if you look at this, as the radiuses, the protective tree radiuses sit on that house or on that lot, these are your protective radiuses here and here. This is the only space you have that you could bring a truck to that stays outside your 20-foot radius on either tree. So if you had materials, you'd have to drop it here or in the street and then carry it from the front of the lot to the rear. There'd be no way to actually keep that protective radius around that tree for any kind of vehicle if you actually try to put up a 20-foot protective radius.
Okay, so, any more questions from the board? Okay. Close it, and you officially have 5 minutes of rebuttal here.
I don't think I have too much to add to the statement. I know Mr. Granoff had mentioned that the application was missing an attestment from a notary stamp or a signed and sealed notary. I'd be happy to go on the record to attest and swear and affirm that the information that I provided on the application is true and correct. It was not a requirement in the city code that that portion of that application be notarized, signed, and sealed. There was a separate form that encompassed the entire application, from what I understood from staff, that was signed and notarized, saying that we are the legal owners and the legal representatives of that property, and that everything we included in the application was true and correct. If that is not the case, I'm happy to affirm and swear to the board that everything that we did submit is true and correct on the board. The other piece that we were talking about was, and I know people brought the notations about alternate building methodologies and things that could be discovered or researched and procured to actually retain the tree. While Mr. Granoff said it's not his right to, or not his responsibility to design the house, it's also not our responsibility to procure new technologies and develop new technologies to save any part of the tree or any part of the issues that are on the tree. Also, with that said, we are trying to do the right thing by preserving the tree in the front of the house to allow that lot to be developed in consistency with the city of Tampa as it's been going on for the last 20 years. The house that Mr. Granoff had noted was not on the lot when my family purchased the lot. It was removed. We purchased it, that lot was completely empty. There was a separate unit on the lot next door, and that was it. There was nothing on the property. So we did not take a house down and try to put a house back. That was never our intent. So I don't feel I need to take up any more time of the board's evening. I appreciate your consideration. We respectfully request that the variance be granted to remove the tree, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair, I have a point of order. Mr. DeCosmo put into evidence a drawing to answer the question. He outlined an area. That's new evidence for the board to consider. I have a right to comment on that evidence.
Madam Chair, it is the pleasure, if the board would like to provide him additional time to provide public comment, that's the pleasure of the board.
When he puts evidence in to answer to a question.
That's the pleasure of the board, if you would like.
Again, I don't have a problem hearing from Mr. Granoff, but I have 3 other members of the board here. Anyone want to give Mr. Granoff another chance?
I don't see anybody. He's not an expert on it.
Could the applicant just hand in the piece of paper he drew to you to add to the file for further review or whatever he needs?
It's part of the record now, right?
It's part of the record.
Yeah, okay. Well then,
No, I want to ask him about that. That wasn't in evidence when he presented his case.
Mr. Granoff, you don't sit on the board. I don't believe that you're able to question the
I'm not trying to sit
applicant
on the
himself.
board. I'm trying to give my client the right to due process.
It's up to the pleasure of the board if you want to give
guys?
him additional time to provide public comment.
Gentlemen?
I'm not commenting. I'm not giving public comment. He's offered new evidence to the board to consider. They considered it. I want to question him about the authenticity of that evidence. I have a
And
right
that's
to
the
do
pleasure
that.
of the board and whether or not they want to give you
I
additional
mean, every
time
case
to
we hear that
provide.
we ask a question is gonna have a new answer, what could be considered new evidence. I mean, we can't sit here until 5 o'clock
It's
in the
not a
morning
new drawing, you
to hear
just,
But
everyone.
It's
Literally
limited to
outline the
that
same line
document,
as
that's
right
all
there.
it's limited to.
I feel like my hands are tied if the
Mark?
rest of the board doesn't.
Please consider my
I mean, I would
request.
second it, but it's not gonna get approved, so I think we're just wasting time.
All those in favor of granting Mr. Randolph a chance?
Well, I haven't
Somebody
heard
said
a
it.
motion and I haven't heard a second.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay,
I'll make a motion to grant him 1 minute.
I'll second the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please note for the record that I'm objecting to Mr. DeCosmo's filing of a document which he circled an area on the map in orange. Thank you.
Madam Chair, did you close the public hearing?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
We did. Public hearing was closed. And it's time for board discussion and a motion.
I mean, look, this is difficult because it's such a beautiful tree. And it's in an unfortunate location on the site. I have not seen any reasonable reconfiguration to me that makes sense, that makes the lot buildable, really even as a one-story, with the current way the canopy and the tree list. And the bigger problem is the access. I'm afraid that anything you drive back there, all the tons of materials that go back there would damage the root structure with that building, especially hearing testimony that root structure has not been compressed or compacted in the last many, many years. Doesn't, 10, 20 years, and it's just been, had something back there, and it's just been a natural lot. I'm afraid that if we didn't grant the variance and they build on the lot or try to build on the lot, that tree is going to end up dying anyway. And so, and I hate to see that, but they do have a right to build on the lot, and I don't want to see us with a tree that gets removed later on, and then unfortunately you get a building that doesn't conform. We had to grant a variance to move it back, and for a tree that probably won't survive the construction.
I would have loved to have seen something proposed that moves the property, the buildable area back so that the setback in the rear.
Did they not do
was-
that?
Yeah, and they still say that they can't do it even with moving it that way, but I'm not convinced. I know.
Well, it seems.
But that's okay, I'm just one of four, so if you'd like to make a motion, I have a feeling I know where this is
But
gonna.
I think it has to do with the fact that even in these alternative plans of moving the building back, there is no reasonable access with the driveways or building the driveway that doesn't impact the tree.
People do it all the time. I understand he's a contractor, I understand he has experience, but it's done all the time. And I don't buy the drainage situation, but we've heard presentation here, you just have to kind of,
The drainage is gonna have to be held on site anyway, that's not a.
that's not an issue, that's not something to be considered. So, can the driveway be built other than paved? Stephen told us, yes, it can. Can that limb be trimmed? Yes, it can. Can materials be brought in on a smaller truck? Absolutely. So, I can't support removal of the tree, but I'm just one vote on the board, so gentlemen, somebody make a motion. I don't like to, the chair shouldn't have to.
It's a very difficult situation. I agree. It'd be fun to talk about moving it further back. But
Sure.
I've got a 2 or 3 story structure 8 feet off the rear lot line of the neighbor behind them.
Do it all the time.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'd have that neighbor in here talking to us about that. I wavered back and forth this entire process
Understood.
of the tree being able to make it, the tree not being able to make it is an extremely difficult decision.
It is.
Nobody wants to see a tree of this magnitude
No.
come down.
So, gentlemen, I kind of like saying, like, pass the vote. I mean, you guys has to make the motion, so,
Thanks, Anna.
well, I don't believe the chair should make a motion, that's,
And you can't.
You cannot.
so, okay.
You cannot. guess I'll give it a whirl and see where it goes. All right. So I move that the variance request for case VRB 24-26 for the property located at 2704 West Tyson be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for removal of a grand tree, based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof that the trees would be rendered hazardous by proposed construction that cannot be reasonably reconfigured when considering the factors set forth in section 27-284.2.5F of the city code for grand tree removal, specifically that the evidence provided in the record and at the public hearing showed that this tree being somewhat close to the center of the line, center of the lot, also being of the size tree, needing the protective barrier, you cannot get the equipment past without doing relatively severe damage to the tree, only to possibly break future limbs in the backside of the tree, which would get past the 25% removal to keep a grand tree healthy. And even post-construction, just the life of the tree, trying to survive, everyday traffic of cars in and out of the lot. I just don't think it would be a viable place for this tree.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
So your motion's failed.
If my motion has failed,
Motion
then
failed.
someone else will have to make the opposing motion. And we have to come to some determination this evening.
I agree. Bear with us. This is a toughie.
Yeah. Just don't see any way to save that tree.
Well, if we deny it, they're gonna have to come up with alternative ways to deal with the situation. So,
I mean, there's no other motion.
Brian,
I'm just going through my head trying to figure out if we deny it and they go ahead and build it, like you say, they do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just prolonging the destruction of the tree? Right? Is it just, it may not happen now, but in 10 years, is that tree coming down because of, and
well, it gained 10 years of its life back.
yeah, I get it.
And I think this is why we exist, to try and deal with the tough, the ones that aren't easily solved, right? This would be this is why the state passed a law about trying to remove trees. I don't see how this lot is buildable without the removal of that tree, and
It's not.
that really stinks.
It's not.
So
I'm
it-
not convinced that that's the case, but
Convince me.
I'm an architect and I'm not supposed to help them design, but I think there are ways to do this. The driveway material, the setback, the tree trimming, the height, getting creative with some areas being 1 story and some being 2 or 3 maybe. There's all kinds of things. I mean, there's variances for setbacks, for just about anything to mitigate, the problems that the tree is causing. So I think you guys know where I stand on
No, I do, and
the
I'm-
motion, but I can't,
I'm looking for some support to try and not approve a tree removal. So could you build a structure on there? I think you could build something on
Sure.
there.
You can.
You can build something.
But it wouldn't be consistent with the neighborhood.
I'm sure that if you drive through there, you're gonna see some, smaller homes that people have, and in my neighborhood in South Tampa too, there's a little bitty house across the street. The lady who lives in it is 100 years old. She's lived there forever, and it is absolutely tiny and it's adorable. And, I'm sure that, bless her heart, if she ever decides to sell it, they're gonna tear it down and put up another McMansion. So, Can you build something there that will work for a family? It just depends. I've got to think that there are some creative architects in this town that would be able to come up with something.
So I'm
Not
trying
me
to,
necessarily.
I'm trying to imagine if you wanted to get the reasonable square footage that the lot should support because of the size of the lot.
Correct.
You're gonna end up with a three-story structure on the pushback against the property line of the tenant or the resident behind, which is the whole point of a setback, that we already have problems where you're sitting up 5-6 feet off the ground because of floodplain.
Right?
And so, and I believe these are the 8, so you're gonna be at least 3.5 feet above where this is sitting right now as a floodplain, then you're 35 feet above that.
Well, you've got 7 feet on the side and 7 feet, so you're really, when you think about it, it's not any different than the side yard setback.
True, but we don't live in our side yards, we live in our front yard and rear yards, in a configuration of lots like this.
There are ways to, we've had people put pools, side yards, and given them basically front yard setback variances. So a pool can be placed on the side by the house. Well, we're kind of stuck here.
So, I mean, why are you against seconding it? What is your opinion
For
on
the
this?
tree removal?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they bought the lot they bought it 25 years ago. The tree was there with nothing else, right? The
Yeah.
other building was removed, so the tree's been sitting there. It didn't grow in the last 25 years. It's been there. They've known that it was there, right? We have a lot of folks come before us that buy lots, trees are in the middle of the lot. We've denied them because they bought the lot knowing that the tree was there,
Right.
right? So now all of a sudden they want to build a home. I don't know if it's for themselves, to sell, I don't know what it's for, but they're wanting to build something on this lot with a tree that has been there for a long time, and they knew the tree was there. And they know we have rules, and I understand that it's their lot, and I understand that they want to do something with it. Part of me is in agreement with Anna that, they could do something, but what is something, right? Is it substantial for them? It is their property. So I'm very much torn because I believe that they knew the tree was there, period. They knew the tree was there. But then on the flip side, I'm like, they should be able to do something with this property that satisfies them. And I'm kind of torn in the middle because I know that if they build something on that lot, no matter what they build, they're going to damage that tree. That I'm in my heart, I believe, right? Even though, Anna, I do agree with you that they could move the building, right? They could move the building, and then you're gonna deal with people behind losing their mind because now they're looking at whatever.
Well, it's a difficult situation because they have owned it so long. They've already had an approval of variance to remove both trees, but it was long enough ago that they weren't 4 inches.
I think they did remove some trees previously, did they not?
Yeah, they did.
I think that
Is that what their initial approval was?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
they've already
removed it
removed,
They did, they removed it.
back in
I believe so.
2010
When it-
or whatever it was.
whenever
Yeah.
that was, so there
Yeah.
are,
Because the longer you own obviously the longer you own the tree, the bigger the tree gets, the harder it
Yes.
gets to
We
remove.
don't know what the,
Yeah, I don't know what the
we don't know
circumstances were
circumstances.
with that.
other than the fact that there were I understand 2 trees that were at some point removed.
But I do very strongly believe that anything that's built on that property with that tree remaining there is going to damage that tree. I really wholeheartedly believe that. I don't think that tree is going to get off unscathed from anything built on that property. I think it's impossible. I really do. It's not, the lot isn't wide enough. Either they're gonna lop half that tree off to get back there, but the fact of the matter is that branch extends into that, it's that 20-foot canopy, that ring, right? And even though they lop that thing off, what does that do to the tree? Is that going to allow those trucks to get back there? I just see a whole lot of mess coming.
And that's their problem, not ours. I mean, if we say it can't be removed, then they'd have to deal with it. It's not up to us to be out there monitoring that they're following the
understand that.
rules. And fences can be taken down and put back up. I know they say, oh, well, we'd have to do this on a regular basis. It's like, yeah, exactly. That's part of the construction process.
all right, so the last thing to me, so I believe the same way you do, that I don't know that tree's gonna, and the biggest thing to me is we have our expert tree person here telling us that that's gonna happen. And so he is the one that's in charge of sort of presenting these things and protecting the trees and making sure he's the gatekeeper. And he's telling us that this tree's not gonna survive.
And it's a B6, right? It's a B6.
Which is a pretty healthy tree.
Very healthy.
It's very healthy. It's a beautiful tree, which is why we're debating this so long.
Yes, it
Yeah, it
is.
is, absolutely.
It is definitely preservation quality.
So
Well, guys,
with that in mind, I'll go ahead and, I don't know if it's too late to do this, but can I second the motion?
I
Or
think
we have
it
to
died.
re-
The motion failed, there has to be a new
Motion failed.
motion.
You wanna put it together again, I'll second it.
Sure.
And we'll see where it goes.
Okay. After additional conversation, I would like to move that the variance request for case VRB 24-26 for property located at 2704 West Tyson be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for removal of a grand tree based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof that the trees would be rendered hazardous by proposed construction and that cannot be reasonably reconfigured when considering the factors set forth in section 284.2.5F of the city code for grand tree removal, specifically that the evidence provided in the record and at the public hearing showed that the location of this grand tree and the protection area around it, in addition to the size of its canopy, would become very hazardous during construction and would have a very high likelihood of not surviving very long post-construction due to the removal of the limbs. And it would become, after that point, a hazard for the homeowners.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed likewise? Your motion passes 3-1.
Madam Chair, I have a point of order. I believe under the rules, do the rules require a vote of 4
No,
for majority of the
Yes.
quorum?
right,
That's in the rules.
correct.
What section of the rules is that? say?
It's in the rules of procedure,
Okay. The variance is approved.
correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for bearing with us here. Next case.
That's another grand tree.
Yes. Totally agree.
All right. The next item on the agenda is VRB 24-30. The property owner is Aman Ramanash. Okay. The applicant is Alex Rios. The property address is 5604 North 18th Street. The zoning is Seminole Heights Residential, SHRS. And this is to remove a grand tree to construct a new home or a new single-family residence. The code section is 27284.2.5, permits for grand tree removal. This is an aerial view of the site. As you can see, the outlined red property. This is the grand tree in question, which is a live oak, 44-inch, canopy measurement 65 by 75. The condition is B6. The mitigation is 20 type 1 trees at 2.5-inch DBEH. This is a photo of the tree in the foreground. You can see it has a very elevated canopy. It's actually, this first limb is actually beyond what it would be for a single or two-story house. This is the location of the tree on site. As you can see, it's towards the rear of the property. There's an ADU that is permitted in construction that's functioning as the primary structure on this site as it exists today. This is the proposed plan. As you can see, the grand tree is this tree right here. And then this is a grand camphor in the rear. This is a specimen tree in the front. So that's kind of where the house is kind of positioned between all the other existing trees. This is option 2, which shows a smaller house, and it utilizes the side reductions. It can't utilize the front reduction because it would push it in to the canopy into the protective radius of the tree in the front. This is alternative 2, which actually shifts the driveway and everything else out of the back to try to alleviate more, but it still is restricted by that front tree. So the comments are consistent with condition. To speak to the TRZ aspect, this lot is 137 feet wide. The cutoff for TRZ, like mentioned before, is 135. Transportation found it consistent. I also provided you guys a memo from Natural Resources on this tree, highlighting kind of the buildable area if the tree were to remain, to maintain the 25% radius. If not, I'll put it up on the Elmo once the presentation is concluded. Water found it consistent. They will have to get all connections. Right away, stormwater, and TECO also found it consistent or consistent with conditions. This is the standard for granite tree removal under 27284.2.5. And then this would be the required conditions on site. The site will comply with chapter 5, 17.5, 21, 22, 23, 26, all technical standards, and chapter 27, unless waived to the request. And then let's make sure I show. So as you can see here, the green box, if we avoided all the tree protection radiuses and due to the building separation required from the ADU in the rear, that's not proposed to be demolished or anything like that. That would be the outline of the buildable area. And that concludes staff presentation.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Hi, hello.
Have you been sworn in, sir?
Yes,
Okay.
Iman Iran Manesh, 5604 North 18th Street. My plan with the property is to build a long-term residence for myself and my family, to stay here in the city. If we follow all the distances we need to be in terms of setback and from the tree to safely build a home there, it would constitute a very small area that wouldn't allow for a home to be lived in for a long period of time, and also it would not be cost effective in terms of the value of the property would be much lower than the cost to build. Additionally, it wouldn't be consistent with other homes in the area. We really wanted to try to save the tree, but with it being in the position that it is in consideration of other factors on the lot, it being somewhat centered, we feel that we're not able to save it to effectively use the property. And I have a picture of the tree also that where we have staked where some of our proposed site plans would be here. And this is the tree. This is the tree in question. And so we're asking to respectfully remove the tree to be able to use the property effectively and for a long period of time.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this?
Hi, Pamela Jackson Haney, 3014 West Harborview. I've been sworn in. I'm with TTAG. I just wanted to ask if, and I didn't have a ton of time to prepare for this one, but is this a laurel oak or a live oak? It's a live oak. It is a live oak. Okay. Well, again, thinking outside the box, and I understand out the proverbial white box that we've been seeing pop up all over South Tampa and the city of Tampa, for that matter. Okay, so I have to tell you guys, I kind of like this. I think it's interesting because it is a little different. you know, with the majority of the house being in the back, but if anybody ever watched Ozark, this reminds me of that house. And I really like that oak tree being there in the courtyard. It's a very cool feature. And I think you could still kind of work around the tree with this little alternative site plan. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Allison Date, 2403 West Chicago in Tampa. And first of all, I want to thank you for being so attentive to thinking about the trees so carefully. I really appreciate that. I think that all the flooding we've been having makes you know that we really do need, especially these larger trees. And I would like to just say that whenever a tree is removed, if that happens in this case, if it's approved, it would really be nice if the people, if they have space, that they plant additional live oaks, because the city keeps saying they don't have any place to plant them. So that would be a really great thing, and maybe even in the arborist report, they could say there is room to plant 1 or 2 live oaks. So I would just like to recommend that. So thank you very much.
Anyone else here to speak for or against? Questions of the board?
I've got a few questions for the applicant. Hey, Mom?
Now, you might want to stay close to for the rest of the presentation.
Stay close.
All right. Going through the different reasonable configurations, it looks like, are you trying to build a 2,200 square foot house? Is that correct?
I believe that's the first.
First floor?
No, it's a one-story structure.
It's a one-story
in all of
structure.
them, and that's for the first proposed plan. And the other plans are different sizes. All of these proposed plans are within what homes of the other area are, but we determined if we were going to build a home there, staying the proper protective radius from the tree and maintaining the fixed setback that is required for the lot, we would only be able to build probably about 900 square feet or less of heated area. But these plans are in line with other homes in the area.
Okay, and the existing structure that I see on the plans, is that gonna stay?
We would like to keep it to prevent wasting that structure, and we would plan to have it stay on the property, yes.
Okay, and I'm seeing the 30-inch oak that's a neighboring property, I guess off to your west.
That's an oak.
Okay, the oak's in the northwest corner, but that's not on his property, so there's nothing we can do with that. I mean, I see some of your alternative site plans. Obviously, Mr. Eister came up with another one, but it looks like that one's only about 800 square feet with a really long hallway to a driveway. And with these, you did use the relief that they provide for setbacks with these alternatives, Mr. Eister? You probably talked to that too. I just want to make sure these alternatives are truly the best alternatives we could come up with aside from your kind of L-shaped building.
Yeah, so the L shape you guys see is just highlighting the buildable area on the lot. It's not meant to be like a alternate plan. It's just kind of show the space that's available if protecting the trees. This property being located in Seminole Heights has to follow the what are called BTLs, or build to lines. So they kind of have to match up with the existing sites. With it being on a corner, it gets the added benefit of having to match the corner and the front of the surrounding sites. And even if that was not a factor due to the existing trees, he can't really shift the house forwards because he encroaches into all the trees along the front of the property. And then you can't shift the house back because of the existing structure that's already there on site. So it kind of constricts where things can be moved based off the criteria that is for grand tree.
It looks like the canopy is up pretty high though, so a 2-story home could be built under that existing tree?
So. So, yeah, if we, say if like a two-story home was built, it would be, say kinda like a square, I guess, located directly in front of the house. And I don't know how it would impact this tree here. At the time, I was evaluating for a one-story house, so I did not take a canopy evaluation of this tree here in the front corner.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Is there a structure currently on the lot? Is there a house on it right now? Aside from the accessory, is there still a house?
No.
That's the accessory structure.
That's the accessory structure there?
That's the house.
It's the current residence that's, the current structure that's there, yes.
Right, the configuration
Which
of-
we will be preserving and turn into an auxiliary structure once the main residence is built.
Right,
That's in
it's,
the-
it's an
it's in the
odd,
front.
it's, the frontage of this lot is odd that the frontage is 18th and not Comanche.
It will be Comanche.
You're gonna change it to
Well,
Comanche?
that's according to original plat, the frontage is Comanche, and when we went to the city to build the home there, they said that the front would have to be from Comanche.
It would be Comanche.
Yes, the existing, that's per plat, the existing structure that's there is somewhat non-conforming
on
and been
18,
there
yeah.
for a long time, so that's
The address is in North 18th.
correct, yes, for now, yeah.
Yeah, but it's that whole piece.
Yeah, Mr. Ister, so if this was instead of being 65 by 75, if this was 65 by 70, we wouldn't be standing here? Is that true?
So,
I read that in the report.
Yeah, so currently, I think the lot is 137 feet long. Looking at the survey, if I can pull that back up real quick.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, I wanna say the lot is 137, so if it was 135, it would not,
According to Hillsborough County, it's 140 by 50.
okay, so if it was 135 instead of 140, you can see the architect actually projected out what the proposed TRZ zone would be if it was 135 instead of 140. And this is this box right here,
So it falls inside the box.
so it would fall inside that box.
All right.
Okay. Any further questions? Sir, you have 5 minutes.
Well, does anybody else want to speak? Or
Well,
anybody in the audience?
that's any, that
Or
we,
anything? No, that's rebuttal, yeah, never mind.
that's,
all
no,
right.
we're in rebuttal.
You are
I have a
correct.
quick question of the applicant. That's, can I still ask?
Absolutely.
Okay. Would you be opposed, if we asked that you replace, say, 2 trees on the site itself, that instead of, obviously you can't do 20 on the
I don't
site.
know that we can do that.
Can we make that a condition?
I don't,
We can
Stephen, I
condition
don't
it.
know
Make
that we
it
can do
conditional.
that.
Usually we can make a condition with that.
Yeah, so, to speak on that, when this goes through building, the 20 mitigation trees will be added to that permit. So whatever can be planted on site, the building department will evaluate, we'll get as much mitigation back on site as possible, and then the remaining balance can go into the applicable fund.
Okay.
So this would be whatever fund encompasses Seminole Heights. So trees can be put back in that area, in places where they're deficient.
So the building department will essentially deal with that.
Correct.
Okay,
Fair enough.
all right. You have 5-minute rebuttal. Anything that you want to add?
No, thank you.
We appreciate that. Okay, guys.
Madam Chair, can you please close the public hearing?
I beg your pardon, yes, the public hearing is closed, and let's hear from, I beg your, no, gavel, no. What is the board's pleasure?
So, not, this one you could actually access, but I don't know, is it buildable? From an architect's perspective, do you see a buildable lot here?
Well, sure, I mean, it's, you can certainly work around the tree. That little sketch that Stephen did was quite creative, and I think offers some options.
Well, I mean, the leg is like 6 feet wide or 8 feet wide.
There's things you can do. I've seen colonnades or, open porches, whatever you want to call it, that have been built in something like that. The fact that it's a one-story is hampering the amount of house they can build. So, can it be done? Yeah, heck yeah.
I mean, looking at the square he drew, looks like it's about 30 by 20, 600 square feet.
I think it said on here like 900 square feet. So, no, I understand.
Yeah. Similar predicament.
I'm just looking for a practical way to build it.
Stephen,
I almost like that.
can I ask you a question?
You'll have to,
Yeah.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the
Back up.
record, the hearing is closed. So if you want to ask staff additional questions,
We have
someone
to
will have to
reopen
make
the
a
hearing.
motion to reopen the hearing.
Can I make a motion to reopen the hearing, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Stephen, I'm sorry, you're just gonna.
Sorry about
Where-
that. So the proposal from the applicant is that the frontage will become Comanche Avenue instead of 18th, right?
Correct.
The trees that are fronting Comanche, are those protected trees?
That is correct. So if you look at it, it's like a mix of
Yeah, it's a
oaks.
mix of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's just a mix of things. And just because say the address is on Comanche, the drive doesn't have to be shifted to Comanche as well. So the house can be as proposed, and then the entrance is off of 18th, I believe, is the address of the
Yeah.
site.
I believe you still have to have a front door in Comanche though, don't they?
Correct.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, could they,
Sidewalk to the inside.
I guess it's not feasible then for the building to push further to Comanche.
Correct, because I think if you push the building forward, you're impacting a 30-inch oak that's in that north corner.
Oh, yeah, okay, I see it. I'm flipping back and forth between Google and, okay, I see it.
And it's got-
Yeah, it's right there, look at that, okay, I see it. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Since you opened the public hearing, and you asked questions of staff, can you please ask the applicant if he has any additional rebuttal?
Sir, your rebuttal is still available to you if you'd like to come and speak. Thank you for
Yeah,
reminding us.
we have no problem with adding more trees there and, to kind of account for this. We really wanted to save the tree originally, but it's not possible. But we have no problem with adding more trees there. In terms of a two-story structure, a lot of the structures in our vicinity are single-story. It kind of doesn't flow with what's consistent in the neighborhood. And additionally, I plan to live there long-term with also some extended family who are elderly. This property is right behind Walmart. It's easy for them to walk there and get groceries and everyday things. So it'd be kind of difficult to have that second story for access of usable area and whatnot. So
Okay,
that's all I have.
close the
you.
public
Yes.
hearing again and hear from the board.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much in favor of approving this.
Make a motion. Come on, you got a brand new card.
Yeah,
No, I'm not going to make a motion.
It's like you're not gonna be busy tonight.
I mean, I'll make one if no one else wants to do it.
I'll second it.
Again, trying to protect trees, I get it.
I
This
do
one,
too.
the nice thing is this lot is already very well treed and it, I just, even Mr. Iser's configuration of the little hook, is not really practical. All right, so on that note, I will move that the variance for request for case VRB 24-30 for property located at 5408 North 18th Street.
5604.
Sorry, 5604 North 18th Street, thank you. Be granted as depicted on the site plan presented to the public hearing for removal of a grand tree based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof that the tree would have rendered hazardous, would be rendered hazardous by proposed construction that cannot be reasonably reconfigured when considering the factors set forth in section 27-284.2.5F of the city code for grand tree removal, specifically that the evidence provided in the record of the public hearing showed that the site is not reasonably able to be reconfigured with the other trees that are in the way, and the applicant wanted to preserve the other trees and the existing structure, which is underneath the existing tree, is a reasonable request for this site.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Likewise opposed? So it passes 3-1. Okay.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is VRB-24-31. The owner is Ralph Lill and Kelly McQueen. The applicant is, I want to mess up the name, so. Okay.
It's actually Ralph Lee the third, somehow like that.
Oh.
Jumbled up there.
Okay. It's at 4002 West Corona Street. The zoning is residential single family, RS60, and the request is to reduce the required setback of a structural edge of a vehicle entrance on an RS60 corner lot from 15 feet to 8 feet from the property line. Section 27290, the structural edge of the vehicle entrance to the garage, carport, or any vehicle storage area must be set back a minimum of 15 feet from the property line. And then that's the diagram in the code. This is a map of the site. You can see there's a existing single-family residence on the corner of Corona and Grady. This is the proposed structure. As you can see, it's a garage that enters from Grady Avenue. This is kind of a blow-up of the site. The photo itself got a little blurry, but you can see 8 feet here in this corner. This is the property line, and then this is 8 feet back. And then there's it meets all other setbacks. It's 3 feet from the rear and 60 feet from the front. Natural Resources found it inconsistent because there was a laurel oak removed from the side of the house along Grady Avenue. At the time of construction, they'll have to provide this documentation before they can move forward, and then additional mitigation, penalty fees, etc. will be evaluated. Transportation found it consistent, wastewater consistent, water consistent, right-of-way, stormwater, and TECO all found it consistent. This is the criteria for a variance. And then if it gets approved, the site will have to comply with chapters 5, 17.5, 21, 22, 23, and 26, and all technical standards of the City of Tampa Code, as well as chapter 27, unless specifically waived by this request. And I will be available for any comments.
Thank you. Is the applicant ready to present?
Good evening, I'm Leah Eas, and I have been sworn in. My address is 4006 West Corona Street, Tampa, Florida 33629. So I am an architect acting as an agent on behalf of the owners here, Trey and Kelly McQueen. I also happen to be their neighbor. So I'm going to share some things on the screen here. Can you guys see that okay? So this is the house existing today. It's probably going to look a little different than you're seeing on Google. The owners bought it back in 2021 with the intention to improve the site and the house. The house was in quite a state of disrepair. Being the neighbor, it was a party house, often beer cans in the yard and in very poor shape. So they've already done significant improvements to the interior, and now we're working on phase 2 to do some exterior improvements to the lot. I, for one, was very grateful when they bought the house and didn't tear it down. As we've alluded to a lot tonight, that happens a lot in these neighborhoods, and we get very new builds that are out of context with the history of South Tampa. So I'm grateful for the efforts being made here. This is the existing site plan. How do I zoom in? And I will zoom in a little bit. On the north side here, you have Corona Street. On the east side here, you have South Grady. And as was spoken about, the southeast corner of the lot is the area that the variance is being requested for. It's worth noting that from the face of the street here, we have 17.1 feet to their property line, and then another 12 feet back to their existing face of structure. So it's pretty far set back from the street itself. So as we talked about, the part of the code we're here to talk about today is in an RS60 zone. Accessory structures can be 7 feet back from the property line. However, in the event of a garage, the structural face of the vehicular entrance is asked to be further back than that, so that, you know, cars are not constantly parking in the public right of way, overlapping sidewalks, all those kinds of things. There is no sidewalk in this condition, and as I pointed out, there's quite a big distance from the street to their property line. So again, on the left here, you have the existing plan in dark gray, and on the right, you have the proposed. So you'll see the dark thick line here is the proposed 2-car garage. We're quite limited in our space to work with the existing structure. So it's quite narrow, as tight as it can be in terms of a 2-car garage, in order to maintain those setbacks, the 3 feet from the rear and the 5 foot from the existing structure. And the intent for the overall site improvements is to have the 2-car garage and the pool added to the rear of the lot. That was always the sort of vision when they bought the home, with the intention to fix it up. So zooming into this a little bit, like I said, we're in compliance with the 5-foot setback from the roof eaves from the primary structure to the proposed garage structure, and again in compliance with that 3 feet on the rear lot line. So the request being asked is to reduce this distance here highlighted in yellow from 15 to 8 in order to be able to fit other site improvements such as the pool, and also to maintain our impervious area calculations threshold. So obviously in a big lot like this, we're worried about stormwater. As you guys know, we have to be less than 50% of the site can be pervious area. So if we extend this driveway longer, we break that threshold and we start to, you know, be more than 50% impervious and have to deal with stormwater issues that are unfavorable. So in terms of hardships, I think it's important to start with just the why of this project. The owners currently park on the street and in a single car driveway at the front on the north side on Corona Street. This is the owner's car here, always parked outside their front. As you can see, Corona Street is very crowded. We often have the streets, there's a lot of teenagers on our street, so we have a lot of cars that park on the street. Just to share a quick anecdote, back in July, we actually had a Tico fire on the power line in front of our house, and the Tico trucks could not get through our street because so many cars were parked on the street. They ended up hitting 3 cars in their efforts to get to resolve the issue with the power line. And I should note too, they have 2 children that are about to approach driving age. Their daughter's getting a learner's permit this year, and their son will follow behind in about 2 years. So they're going from a 2-car family to a 4-car family, probably very quickly. There is an existing, quote, garage. It was built in the 1940s with the original part of the house. So the size of the garage does not fit modern day car standards. But on top of that, previous owners located the air handling unit, and additional structure that upholds that, and the roof in the garage. There's a ton of plumbing, ductwork, all that stuff. So this, quote, 1-car garage is really a utility space and completely unfeasible for vehicular storage. To give you a little idea of the backyard where the proposed 2-car garage would be placed, this is the master suite here off on the right side of this photo. So that's a window, an egress window leading into that master suite, and then doors leading into the main kitchen and living area. So you can see we really wanted to, in best design practice, keep as much distance as we could from all of this to maintain daylight and just not have to interrupt any of that. Also on the left side, you can't see it in this picture, but there are 2 trees on the southwest corner of the site. So again, as we factored in the whole totality of the site design, wanted to keep adequate distance from those. So a couple quick explanations on alternate options as design conflicts. So as you can see in the diagram here, right, one way to keep that 7-foot side yard setback is to have your driveway access rotate, or your front, or your garage door, I should say, rotate. If we were gonna try and do that and have the garage door located here, you can see we're in conflict with the existing structure. I wouldn't have clearance and turning radius in order to do that. You can see that's sort of what the next door neighbor has done. Theirs is a little bit different because it's part of their primary structure, but in essence, our face of garage, which would be here, would be completely in plane with the neighbor. It would just have the garage door parallel to Grady Street instead of perpendicular. Similarly, we looked at, I did a lot of studies with them, we looked at attaching the 2-car garage to the existing house. So I showed you the windows and doors that would be compromised, and we'd have to put reconfigure their master bath essentially for egress purposes to get a new window in. And then on top of that, we still would not meet the setbacks required at the rear yard, which is that yellow line. We'd still be past that 20-foot setback in the rear. So to talk a quick bit about the neighborhood and the site, this is a 1/4 mile radius of the site. This is Dal Mabry over here. We're 2 blocks in from Dal Mabry. This is a quick study that we did on corner lots around the area. So the red dots that you see are essentially what we're asking for. It's a detached garage less than 15 feet from the property line. So any red dot you see already has this condition and this variance that we're requesting. The pink has a driveway, doesn't lead to a garage face, but it leads to the building edge, but that driveway is still less than 15 feet from the property line. And the blue are attached garages, but again, less than 15 feet from the property line. So had the owner come and knock this down and built this new, they would obviously be able to get a garage a lot closer, parallel to Grady. Once again, I express a lot of gratitude as an architect and a neighbor. That was not their choice. These are some pictures within 2 blocks of the site that have the exact condition that we're asking to achieve, which is vehicular entrance less than 15 feet from that property line. So these are all detached structures. You can see them, all of them have around 7 to 11 foot setbacks. I personally went out and measured every single one. And then just within 1 block, so this is the property site, you just go 1 block up, these 3 structures have the exact condition of a detached garage structure at 7 feet, 11 feet, and 9 feet setback from the property line. So it's very consistent with the neighborhood. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, and just to address it, because it's on there, we do have the arborist report noting the trees that were inconsistent in the report being removed as being hazardous and high risk. So I'm happy to share this or answer any questions you guys have about the trees as well.
Does that conclude your presentation?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Does anyone from the audience wish to speak for or against this case?
Do we count as separate or do we count as the applicants?
Maria Pettis-Mackel from the legal department. They are part of they're the applicants.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, seeing none, questions from the board?
My only question is just, thank you for the presentation, it's very well thought out.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have one question for you. It's hard for me to read on the original site plan. It looks like there is a utility easement in the rear of the property. You're not going to be inside of that or close enough to it that's going to cause any issues for utility companies?
It's 2 feet, so as long as we maintain the 3 foot.
I just saw the line.
Can you please put back on there the drawing that you had that showed the existing easement in the front or in front of where the garage is going to go? You said that the, yeah, go ahead.
The site plan?
The one showing the neighboring property.
That's, yeah, right there. No, that's good. Okay, so the 8 feet is from the property line?
Correct, but it would be plus 17 to the street, so it's 25 feet back from the street.
Okay. So the fact that they would have 4 cars would have 2 in the garage theoretically, and then 2 outside in that proposed driveway?
They also have the single car driveway in the front on
And
Corona
that's gonna
Street.
stay?
The intention would be for that to stay,
Okay,
correct. And we can always make the teenagers, tandem park.
okay. Okay, so, no, I'm sorry, what was the dimension from the property line to the setback there?
From
Yes,
the
uh-huh.
street edge to where we would like it is 25 feet,
Okay.
25.1 feet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions from the board? You have 5-minute rebuttal if you'd like.
You could say something if you still want to say something.
Oh,
Just real quick, I just wanted to mention, Trey McQueen here. I served honorably in the Navy for 21 years. I lived in Florida 3 times before. After we retired, I let my wife pick where we wanted to live, and she wanted to come here to Tampa. She got a job down here, and we bought this house with a realtor under the expectation that we could, I just want to say expectation, but we had like this plan. Vision, there you go, vision, that's the right word. This vision that we could, eventually, we didn't have a garage in our last house in Washington DC. We didn't have a garage in our house in Japan. And so we wanted to, when we got this house, actually have a garage to put our cars in because it gets so darn hot here in Florida. And so we're trying to look at this whole thing holistically in phases, and we bought the house. That's what our realtor told us that we could do. And so that's all we're trying to do is just fulfill. We didn't tear anything down. We want to stay with the original plan of the neighborhood. We're trying to employ our neighbors and have become our friends.
You chose well.
Yeah, I also want to publicly recognize Leah here for doing such hard work above and beyond. Our GC is a neighbor across the street, Crossdale Mabry, and so we're just trying to do the best as we are new people here in Tampa, but to conform to the city and also to make this our home for our family, because this is where we're staying now that I don't have to move every 3 years. So thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Okay.
I will say I very much respect the owner's approach to being proactive and not reactive to these situations. I have clients on the daily asking me to go for variances after they've already screwed up or created their own hardships. And Kelly and Trey have really worked hard to figure out what the best solution is before they go and do the site improvements.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time.
Yeah. All right, close the public hearing and hear from the board. I'm real familiar with this neighborhood. One of those pink dots was the house I used to live in 35 years ago. And we had a driveway that, no garage, just driveway. So I understand what's going on in that neighborhood. And I think your presentation was very clear and concise, and we appreciate that very much. I'll ask one of the gentlemen to see if they want to make a motion.
Sure. I will move that the variance request for case VRB 24-31 for property located at 4002 West Corona Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in setback of the structural edge of vehicular entrance on an RS60 corner lot from 15 feet to 18 feet from the property line.
15 to 8.
Sorry, 15 to 8 feet from the property line. Based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that they're looking to add a detached garage to an existing structure. The way the lot, being a corner lot, is configured, that the location of the garage is the most fitting place to put it. It doesn't affect any trees. Additionally, the distance from the property line to the edge of pavement is 17 feet on top of the 8 feet setback that they've got to the structure, creating a 25-foot distance from the EP. So there should be no health or safety factors to be considered.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor of the motion as stated signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. The motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Oh my God, yes. That's why I was very impressed.
All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is VRB 20-24-32. The owner is Ocho Rodriguez. The applicant is Medeiros Gueva. The property address is 1705 Alexander Road South. The zoning is residential single family, RS 60. This is a request for an accessory structure. So it's a request, a front yard setback reduction for an accessory structure from 6 feet to 7 feet. Request in height increase for an accessory structure from 15 feet to 16 feet. And then request a side yard setback for the primary structure from 7 feet to 5 feet. And then request a reduction of the primary structure eave to eave from the accessory structure to the primary structure from 5 feet to 1 feet. And then 27-290 accessory structures have the following setbacks: 60 feet from the front, 7 feet from the corner, 3 feet from the side, 3 feet from the rear, and 15-foot max height. The previous actions are BLD 23050291, which is expired. And then there's a code case, CMP-23-0009152 for construction without permits. This is the site. As you can see, it's on the on Alexander, and it kind of curves around, creating a long front yard. This is the structure that is being discussed today. This is a zoom in of the site. As you can see, they have a 6-foot setback here. There's also a 5-foot utility easement as well. So this is outside of the utility easement. We had right of way, evaluate that. And then this is the eve to eve separation here. That's going from 5 feet to 1 foot. And then due to it being on the front and this being 7 feet back, it needs that reduction as well. This is a visual of the structure. As you can see, it has a driveway, a gate, and then it has a boat parking. So natural resources found it consistent with conditions. During the construction phase, further changes or requests can be made, and that's just to make sure they're complying with green space, tree is on site, etc. Transportation found it consistent, wastewater consistent, water, right of way, stormwater took no action on the review, and then TICO found it consistent with conditions and attached the memo. Again, this is the criteria for hardship under 27-80. And then it would have to meet the following condition. The site will comply with chapters 5, 17.5, 21, 22, 23, and 26, and all technical standards of the City of Tampa Code, as well as 27, unless waived specific to this request. And then I'll be available if you guys have any comments or concerns.
Okay. The applicant, ready?
There's an interpreter on this case, so we're gonna, Madam Clerk is gonna swear in the interpreter.
Do you swear or affirm translate from Spanish to English and English to Spanish?
Yes. Would you like me to state my name?
Yes, please.
My name is Lucy Cuellar, Spanish interpreter.
Does she need to give her address also?
Pardon?
Does she need to give her address also?
Sure.
Hola, buenas tardes.
No, yeah.
10939 Keys Gate Drive, Riverview, Florida 33579.
Okay.
Buenas tardes, estoy bajo juramento. Mi nombre es Miladis Guevara Lorente. Good afternoon. I am under oath and my name is Miladis Guevara Lorente. Hablaré de la propiedad 1705 de South Alexander Road. I'm going to talk on behalf of the 1705 Alexander Road South property. Estamos aquí por unas violaciones que hicimos de un cover line de una terraza.
We're here due to some violations about a cover line on a terrace or lanai.
De Lanai. Thank you. El dueño de la propiedad, Junior, debido a estas dos violaciones que tenemos, que uno es una estructura separada de la casa, menos de 5 pies. The owner, Junior, he is aware of the 2 violations from the structure that is separated from the home
y el cover line del patio.
and the cover line of the patio.
El cover line ellos lo hicieron porque ellos tienen un acceso a una cocina pequeña
They made the cover line because they have a small access to a small kitchen that is outside.
y es una pequeña terraza y entonces le hicieron el cover para el niño que jugara, tuviera sus cosas ahí. También pegaba mucho el sol y cuando llueve pegaba todo a la puerta.
And they had built that small lanai, so that way they do have a child and the child could play there and they would have their things, and also the sun would also hit pretty strongly there, and, you know, when it would rain.
Okay. La estructura separada que se hizo en la casa
The structure that was built that is separate from the house,
es porque él tenía un bote.
it's because he had a boat.
Está consciente que hizo las violaciones, que tenía que haber hecho los permisos primero.
He is conscious and realizes that he should have done the permits before he built the structure.
Esta es otra.
This is another one.
Ok, debido también de las 2 violaciones que hizo, el cover line que está separado, la estructura que está separada de la casa debe tener 5 pies y estamos pidiendo que tenga un pie.
And also, even though, you know, he is aware, due to the 2 violations, we are asking that the structure that is built, that it's supposed to be 5 feet, we're asking for 1 foot of the cover line.
Este viene siendo el frente de la casa,
This is the front of the house,
donde estamos pidiendo un variante de 60 a 7 pies, debido a que la casa tiene más frente.
and then we are asking for a variant of, there's 60 feet, we are asking 7 feet because the front of the house has more square footage.
Sí, más que patio. Tiene
Yeah.
más frente todo. Hace como un pie, como el corte de...
Because the lot is more shaped as a pie, so it does have more front than it does have backyard. Can you see that?
La ciudad ha dicho que todo este corner es el frente de la casa.
The city has stated that this whole corner, this is the front of the house,
Y que le estamos haciendo de 60 a 7 de la parte de atrás.
and we're doing 60 to 7 in the rear of the home.
El cover, lo que hicieron separado de la casa, todo está hecho sin permiso.
The cover that they did from the house, that's the structure that's separate from the home, everything was built without permits.
El dueño no piensa cerrar ninguna de sus partes de la casa ni del INAI.
The owner is not planning or is not going to, of the structures that have been built, he is not going to enclose them.
Si le aprueban el variante, tomará todos los permisos, hará los planos, todo para que tenga todo bajo código, el nuevo código que tiene la ciudad.
And if the variant is approved, the owner is willing to do all the site plans, do everything under code as the city requires.
Nada de lo que ha hecho ha perjudicado a ningún vecino.
Nothing of what the owner has built has affected any of the neighbors.
sus canaletas y las salidas, los drenes y todo del agua, ¿están todos bien?
Everything that has to do with the drainage, for the water, everything, is all good.
Espero que nos den la oportunidad de tener un patio para que juegue su niño.
We ask that you, give us that request so that way, his child is able to play in the patio.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Stephen, you have some?
I just wanted to clarify one thing. Let me get back over. As most of the things you guys saw on the request were about the accessory structure, if you look at this site plan, there is a covered lanai here too, and that's what the reduction is for from right here, this covered lanai. That's what the primary structure reduction from 7 to 5 is for. Because it has a solid roof, it has to meet principal structure setbacks. So I just wanted to clarify that for you guys. It's not attached to the accessory structure that's requesting the setbacks, because it's meeting the side setbacks of 7 feet.
And can you just confirm, Mr. Ister, that the covered lanai and the
There's 4 different requests.
structure that has the cover for the boat, those are already existing?
Correct. Both items are existing.
And that was done without a permit?
And that was done without a permit. That's why that CMP number was referenced for the code case. I just wanted to clarify that part because I didn't speak to it at first. So I just wanted to cover all 4 requests being made.
So there's 4 different requests associated with this?
Correct.
And they're excuse me, they're for different structures on their site, or all for the same piece?
So if we're gonna break it down. Items 4, let's see. Yeah, items 4, 1 and 2 are for the accessory structure.
Which is the one, thank you,
This-
okay.
That.
Okay, the boat parking.
And then number 3 is for the covered lanai area.
Okay.
That's right here.
And all of those are already there,
Correct.
and all were built without a permit.
Correct.
And lanai is not enclosed.
Correct.
Or attached to the structure.
The lanai is attached.
It is attached.
The accessory structure is not.
It's not.
There's a 1-foot separation.
Okay.
And that's one of the variances that's requested,
Correct.
separation as well. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, anyone in the audience to speak for or against this? Okay, any questions from the board?
Has there been any letters or support or against anything from the neighbors? I didn't see any, but.
We did not receive any letters.
So this will all have to go back through permitting.
That is correct. At the time of permitting, they'll have to provide the engineering and all that for the structure itself. And drainage, of course.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of paving.
In this unique, so there are basically 2 front yard setbacks on the east and south side of the property?
Yeah, so because of how the road curves, that's all one setback. It's all front because of how it's curved.
Does the existing structure meet the 60-foot setback?
Correct. So the existing home in the middle of the lot meets all setbacks. It's the covered lanai and the accessory structure that are not meeting.
And the green area calculation on that chart are for the proposed pieces? I mean, what's there now, it's not?
Correct. So that is for what's existing on site now, not for, it doesn't not include.
It's not going to get worse, in
Correct.
other words. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay. No further questions?
I have a question for the applicant.
Go for it.
Can you tell us what your hardship is?
¿Usted nos puede decir entonces qué es la parte en que le está afectando esto a usted o qué es la parte difícil para usted? Que tengo que cambiar los setbacks para poder someter los planos y legalizarlo.
I'm gonna have to change the setbacks so that way I can legalize them.
You can what?
Para someter los planos y legalizarlo todo. So that way I can submit the site plans and, make them legal.
That's not a hardship. So what we're looking for is what about the property made you have to build it the way it is?
Entonces, lo que está diciendo que la parte que difícil, lo que fue lo que estaba usted teniendo el problema que la causó a que tuvieran que edificar eso. La terraza es esta, ¿no? Esta es la primera cosa que hicimos fue la terraza. The first thing that we built was the terrace, or the lanai. De lanai, de cover, y aquí tenemos como una pequeña cocinita y es un pequeño el espacio, y entonces lo hicimos así, está pegado.
Let me help you out.
It's a small space and we built this little kitchen, permítame.
Okay. Is the shape of the lot, I think someone alluded to, is the shape of the lot what makes it difficult to build on?
Entonces, la forma o como es el lote lo hace difícil para poder edificar. Claro, porque no tenemos más patio para atrás, como un ejemplo, si tuviéramos 30, 40, el lote es más gancho para el lateral. Yes, because it's not like we have more footage in the back or we have more yard, we have more sideways.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more to the side.
Okay.
Y así quedó. Ahora lo tenemos así, esperemos que nos los dejen. So now we have it like this and I hope that you allow us. Pero es open, no vamos a cerrarlo ni nada. It's not going to get enclosed, we're going to keep it open.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
¿Alguna otra pregunta de la Junta?
You have 5-minute rebuttal if you want to add anything to the presentation.
Tiene 5 minutos más si usted quiere agregarle algo a la presentación. También en la parte de atrás, con la terraza, es ahí cuando pegaba tanto el sol y si llueve, cuando uno sale se mojea los pies, el sol pega en toda esa pared de cristal. And also the reason for building the lanai was because in that back part of the house, when it would rain, it would hit that part of the house and the sun would be very strong on that side.
Okay. Anything else?
¿Algo más? No.
Okay.
That's it. Gracias.
Okay, so
Thank you.
close the public hearing and
Vamos a
hear
cerrar
from the
el
board.
público.
This is a weird, I hate after the fact
Yeah.
that come here after things are built. But I look at this and this is such a weird lot that the way it's pie-shaped and I don't see where else they would have been able to put anything else on there with the setbacks that they have. So as much as it pains me to say, if they had come before us, before they built it, I might not be thrilled with, some of these, eave to eave, 5 feet to 1 foot from eave to eave, but it's there now, and as long as they agree to not enclose it, I would not have a problem supporting it.
Yeah, I mean, the carport area for the boat at 60 feet would be non-existent, so even if they came prior, it would definitely still be something that would have to be brought in front of us.
And the separation from the structure, that's just something they need to fire rate. That's
They'll have to
building.
deal with that in permitting.
Yeah, that's permitting.
Okay,
Okay.
You guys wanna wear me out?
making you work tonight.
I move that the variance request for case VRB 24-32 for property located at 1705 Alexander Road South be granted, let me start over, sorry, I've got to do the condition. Moving that the variance request for case VRB 24-32 located at 1705 Alexander Road South as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in front yard setback for an accessory structure from 60 feet to 7 feet. Request a height increase for an accessory structure from 15 feet to 16 feet. Request a side yard setback for the primary structure from 7 feet to 5 feet. And request for reduction of the primary structure eave from the accessory structure eave from 5 feet to 1 foot. With the following conditions, that the carport accessory structure and the lanai on the primary structure never be enclosed or air conditioned. That said variance as conditioned be granted based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code. Specifically that this is a strange corner lot. It even has a much larger radius than a standard corner lot. So it really only has 2 side yards and a front setback. That creates a real difficulty when trying to put in an accessory structure because everything's considered 60 feet off the front. And the lanai, to be a usable size, need to be the size that it is, and that these are in consistency with the neighborhood and don't seem to provide any health or safety risks.
Second.
No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed likewise? Okay, you have your variance granted.
Thank you.
And I believe in offering praise where it's appropriate, and your interpreter did a terrific job. I speak Spanish, I'm a native speaker, and she did a great job conveying what you said. Okay. Next case.
Over the hump.
Yeah, another tree.
The next case is VRB-24-34. The property owner and applicant is Scott Gosen. The property address is 4514 West Watrous Avenue. The zoning, I left off the thing, is RS 75, and it's residential single family. The request is to remove 2 grand trees to construct a new single family residence. The section of code is 27-284.2.5, permit for grand tree removal. This is a aerial of the site. As you can see, it's RS 75 along West Watrous Avenue. I separated the grand tree so you guys could get an evaluation of both. Grand tree 1 is a live oak, 48 inches, with a canopy measurement of 70 by 75. The condition is C6. And is mitigation of the 18 type 1 trees at 2.5 inches. These are photos of the tree. As you can see, this is the existing residence that the Gosens currently reside in. The first structural limb, which is this large limb here, which is about 1/3 of the tree. There's 3 large trunks that come off. This one goes over the house, this one goes to the front, and then this one goes off to the side. This large limb is 8 feet above grade at that location. Grand tree 2 is another 46-inch live oak, 56 by 75, C7 condition. And the mitigation is 15 type 1 trees at 2.5-inch DBH. This is grand tree 2. As you can see, it's been over just coexisting with the house. The tree has no limbs over the home. There is some canopy meeting of the front tree and this tree up above this area, which is not shown in the photo. Then it has a large lead that lost a limb about a year to 2 years ago. But it's covered in vines at this time, so it's hard to get a full evaluation of that leader. This is the current structure and a survey of the site. You can see grand tree 1 is right here. And then grand tree 2 is right here. This is the proposed structure and color. It shows a circular driveway with the home. And then there's a large 60 to 80 inch grand tree in the rear that is off-site. And you'll see why that's important in these next configurations. So this would be what would happen if they built the existing house today to today's standards. The house has no footers, it has a crawl space. So they have had issues with foundational pillars underneath the home. So if they came in and created footers in these areas, they would be approximately 2 feet off the trunk on Grand Tree 2, and then about 4 to 5 feet off of Grand Tree 1. Just to kind of give it reference to the current structure. This is option 2, if they try to shift the home back. The outlines here, these gray kind of polygon shapes, are the canopies. It pushes it back into this 80-inch tree back here. And then all options are 2-story. Natural resources found it consistent with conditions and attached in our memo. Transportation found it consistent, wastewater consistent, water consistent. They currently have a utility application in. Right-of-way found it consistent with conditions. There's an existing 5-foot easement that is shown on the site plan. Currently, there are encroachments into the easement. However, per the application, the plans to rebuild, please note that no permanent structures or private utilities included drainage can be placed in the easement. Proposed alternatives. Site plan 1 shows encroachments into the easement, mirroring existing conditions that cannot be replaced in the easement area. Stormwater found it consistent, and then TECO had no response. Again, this is the criteria for granted tree removal under 27-284.2.5. And then it would have to meet the standard condition of the site will comply with chapters 5, 17.5, 21, 22, 23, 26, all technical standards of the City of Tampa, and chapter 27 unless way specific to this request. And I will be available for any questions or concerns.
Is the applicant here to speak?
Good evening. My name is Scott Ghost, and this is my wife Courtney, and we reside at 4514 West Waters Avenue, and yes, we have been sworn in. I'm here to speak about application VRB 24-34. My wife and I are the applicants, and I am the registered architect for the project as well. My wife and I purchased this property. We were arguing whether it was October or August of 2014, so bear with us by a few months there. And our family has lived in this home ever since. Over the past 10 years, we have had some difficult situations maintaining the property due to some structural issues that were alluded to, and we'll discuss those a little bit further. And these issues have been caused by these 2 oak trees, which frankly attracted us to this property in the first place, so trust me, we like these trees too. About 2 years ago, we decided to rebuild this property for a variety of reasons. We're going to get into a few of those in the presentation here, but a few of them were, the house is located in evacuation zone A. The existing house is currently 7.5 feet NAVD. And then the continued damage caused by the 2 trees that are in very, very close proximity to the house. And then also just wanting to protect our family and our assets from the storms and the flooding that keep occurring here in Tampa. So the hardships, so the 2 trees that we're requesting to be removed, we'll show you some images here, but they're probably about 3 feet away from the house. They're very, very close. So this is the first tree, so this is the 48 one that's kind of pretty much close to being center in the lot, to kind of go back to the earlier presentation this morning. This has created some significant issues for the house since we purchased it. We've actually had subfloor collapses in our front living room. Our hallway bathroom actually had the subfloor collapse just because of damage from the roots that are underneath of it. We've had to shore up some of the little pilings that are underneath of it. It's been a lot. The roof condition has deteriorated quite significantly over the last decade as well because of the amount of pollen and stuff that falls out of these trees is quite significant. And the main branches of these two trees are very, very low. So when we've been trying to design this property for the last 2 years, you can see by this bottom image, you know, that branch that's right above the roof of the ridge, I actually hit my head on that thing just last week, just trying to blow leaves off the roof. That's how low it is. And when you think that this house is only 7.5 feet above sea level, you think by the time you go, you know, FEMA +1, we're probably having to raise this house by 5 feet just to build in its current location. We would be into all these main limbs that are on these trees just to build in the same footprint. During recent storms, we actually had quite a few branches fall on the roof. During a storm last year, a large branch that was alluded to in the previous presentation actually fell into our neighbor's driveway, and it luckily fell between both their vehicles. When that branch was on the ground, of course, we didn't really know we were doing this at the time, or we would have taken more photos. But the inside of that branch was kind of powdery. You know, anybody that's kind of taken down trees, that see trees that are in poor condition, they kind of know what we mean. So this is that tree that's on the side of the property. We actually hired a tree service to come out, what was that, maybe 3 years ago. It has these huge, huge vines that have grown up the tree from before we bought it. Like some of these vines are 6 inches, 7 inches, and it's completely enveloped the entire tree and wrapped all the way up it. So we hired a tree service to come in and try to cut those off at grade, trying to save the tree. You know, obviously we didn't know we were going to do this. And you know, a lot of those vines are now dying and they're falling off. And you know, basically what the arborist told us back then is that those vines were kind of choking the tree. So this tree that we're looking at on the screen right now, originally was rated a C8. I saw in your presentation, I think you said C7, which basically means it's a borderline tree. When we had it looked at about 3 years ago, they actually deemed it hazardous back then, but we were hoping we could save it with the vines that we cut off of it. And then the other thing is, you know, all the bedrooms of our house are along this wing. So all 3 of our daughters kind of live underneath the big limbs of these trees. And I think we've all seen some stuff in the newspaper right now where some of these limbs have fallen on houses recently, and there's actually some lives lost that were recently. And pretty much any time a big storm comes up, we actually take our daughters out of their rooms because of it. So we kind of talked about the impacts to the existing structure. So what about the proposed structure? So obviously those impacts are quite similar. The one is located in the middle of the property, which makes any reasonable configuration quite impossible. The tree in the northwest corner is well inside the setbacks, will make designing around it very difficult, especially when you consider a new structure would have to be elevated about 6 feet above the existing grade to get above the flood elevation. The other issue is the canopy of these trees is very large. So when you consider having to raise the house by, the house by 5 feet, almost 7 feet above the site, and then place a structure on top of that, trying to build it, trying to get foundations put into it. The existing house that you see in these pictures, it only has 8-foot ceilings, and you can see by that roof, it's just a 312 pitch. So any new structure would be significantly taller than this. So we've provided 2 alternate site plans, kind of showing some of these issues. And the other thing which is really important to look at is the back of the house. So I measured that tree that's in the back. I measured it to be 90 inches. So I kind of put estimated. I'm not an arborist by any means of the imagination. And it's located right in the southeast corner of our site. So that tree that's back there is absolutely massive. So here's some pictures of it here. Let me zoom out here. So this tree, obviously we're trying to fight really hard because we want to save this. So in the proposed design, all these little auxiliary structures that are in the back of the property come out, all that concrete work comes out, and then that tree really gets, a big yard, frankly, that it'll shade, which will be a great place for the kids to play back there. The branches of this tree are very low. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look at that bottom picture, when I blow the roof off the carport, I have to huddle down just to get underneath the branches of it, so it's super low. So in other words, you couldn't push a new house further back without cutting off some big limbs off of this tree. So that's the reason why we really can't push the house any further south. The limbs of the tree, that big one that are in the back, they're They push all the way back to the back edge of the existing house. So the new house, when we were designing it, we really tried to make sure that we kind of kept it as far north as we could to try to protect that tree. Another thing I want to point out, backwards. We kind of talked about replanting trees. Obviously, that's important to us too, because that was a big part of the charm when we bought this house. It was these trees that attracted it to us. And frankly, in Culberth Bayou, the oak canopy is kind of what that neighborhood is famous for. So we do plan on doing that circular driveway, and we push the driveways farther out so we have 35-foot spacing to put two large live oaks back in its place. We're also looking at another one that can go on the southwest side.
Excuse me,
But
can
we
you want to rotate that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go, thank you.
There we go. Sorry about that. And then those palm trees over there are existing. So in other words, we do plan on planting some big trees back on this lot. We do want to recreate that. Our neighbor to the plan left of this, they had a big grand tree that fell recently as well. There's actually unfortunately been a lot of it because all the oaks that were planted in this neighborhood were about 1960, 1961, and we have seen a lot of failures. So the nice thing is, like, the size of the trees that you see in this image right now, they recently planted that same size right along the front. So it really starts to recreate that cadence closer to the road, which will end up regrowing that canopy, which will be a good look for the neighborhood. We talked about some other trees falling off on Ferncroft. And then I guess the last thing which I would touch on is, how does this impact the neighbors around us? So this is a really poor sketch compared to what that nice young lady did just a few minutes ago. I quickly did this before I left the office before I came over here, but the red box is our site. And we now have letters of support from all the neighbors that touch our property, so those blue boxes that you see here. I uploaded 4 of those to Excella today. I have the 5th one in Courtney's hands here that we can upload and submit to the record. We are designing the property so that it has similar finishes and a look and feel to what's in the neighborhood. We very much want this to kind of look like it's been there for a while, and that's our goal, is to kind of maintain the character of where we live. Anything you can think of, Court? And then maybe the last thing which I would mention is, the damage that's going underneath this house structurally. 30 seconds, okay, thank you.
Keep going.
We talked about the subfloor repair, we've talked about the roof. It's actually also started damaging our utilities that are running right alongside that tree that's on the northwest side. We actually have 3 broken utilities currently running along that side. It's literally pushed them up to the surface and broke them wide open. So we have some serious structural issues that we will have to do to maintain the current house if this was disapproved. So for those reasons, we would ask for this to be approved, and thank you for your time.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience to speak?
Good evening. My name is Pamela Jackson-Haney. I live at 3014 West Harborview Avenue, and I'm a member of the Tampa Tree Advocacy Group. I think this, I enjoyed the presentation. It was very thorough and matched what I read on Excella also. I think this is a good opportunity to try to build a home that coexists with our existing Grand Live Oaks. The one in the middle, I totally get that. But the one off to the right that's been rated a C7, I believe, and it's a live oak, a 46-inch live oak that sounds like it's still in good shape. It's not D-rated. I think this would be a great opportunity to save that oak. Some of the laurel oaks that were planted, 40 years ago, or, I can see, but some of these grand oaks, they're hundreds of years old.
Thank you.
It takes them hundreds of years to reach their grand size, and they're disappearing quickly. The last City of Tampa tree report shows that only 3% of our canopy is made up of live oaks. We currently have over $5 million in the city's tree trust fund because of situations like this one. There are no places to plant these new trees because homeowners and developers want to take up every square inch of their lot with house. Paying into that tree fund doesn't absolve anyone of what is happening in cases like this, and there are so many cases like this in Tampa. For the home in question, can one of these live oaks be saved? The one on the right corner. Maybe instead of 2 garages as shown in the elevation, on the right and the left, you would only be able to have 1 garage on the left, and not have the garage on the right. As stated earlier, no one is even entitled to 1 garage or a pool. Could you use an alternative building method to save the oak? There are no limbs over the proposed house, as stated. The applicant speaks of trees that are failing on his property, the one on the right, and in the neighborhood. Trees need regular maintenance, just like your car, your lawn, your AC, and your roof. If you are lucky enough to have one of these grand beauties on your property, you have to take the time to have them examined by an arborist regularly and pruned or fertilized if necessary. I'm just happy to hear that they tried to remove the vines. Vines have no place on our live oaks, although some people really like them. They should not be on our live oaks. This goes a long way toward keeping everyone safe and the trees happy. So I feel like there must be ways to save at least one of these live oaks, and we all have to be open to finding ways to do this before the live oaks dwindle down to 2% of our canopy, and then 1% of our canopy, and then they're gone. And truly, that tree outside the right of his house, his children won't live to see a tree that large, and maybe not even his grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Board questions?
Mr. Exter. Looking at the tree on the west side of the home that hangs over the existing roof structure by about 4 feet or so, 5 feet, something like that. There you go. Yeah, that guy there. Is that the one that hangs over the roof?
So
or that
it
one just
has-
goes kind of straight up and kind of leans off towards the other guy's house?
Yeah, this side, I guess you can't really see when I'm using my pen to point. This limb is
Yeah.
what the one that had the failure.
Yeah.
And then there are some smaller limbs up above. And then this is where the owner referenced the utilities.
Would there be a way to remove that structure without toppling that tree off to the right? I mean, and save the tree?
Yeah, kind of similar to like what we talked about before. The trees have coexisted with the home, or really the trees have existed beyond the home. You know, the trees are kind of winning in this situation. There are no footer lines. You know, in a lot of cases, we have footers. You can remove old footers and try to utilize them again. With this situation, I don't know how, like if we give it the 20-foot protective radius, that's about, say, middle between these 2 windows. You know, I don't know what kind of understructure is here that would have to be removed to reconstruct. So I don't know if I can fully answer that question.
But it would be difficult.
It would be
I'm
difficult because,
assuming.
you know, like if the owner's saying with pillars being shifted under the home, there are large roots. So those, even just removing the old pillars would probably cause some damage to the root structure.
Okay. And if we're able to save that tree, and by code, they have to bring in 5 feet of fill, plus or minus. So you'd either bury 5 feet of that tree or you'd have to build a tree well around it.
Correct. Yeah, and you know, trees can sometimes handle a six-inch grade change. And kind of, again, speaking to Scott's, I didn't see this limb fall. Our assessments are from the ground, so I don't know what's going on. That's why my rating was a little bit better than what his arborist provided. His arborist is allowed to get on the roof. Mine's from the ground.
Gotcha.
Just speak to that discrepancy as well.
Okay. So 5 foot of fill would not be good for the tree. A 5 foot deep tree well full of water would not be great for the tree. I'm just trying to figure out in my mind if there's any way that we could actually feasibly save this by some sort of construction or reconfiguration, and it seems to be falling a little short at the moment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question for the applicant. Why do you feel the need to have 2 two-car garages. I understand South Tampa and I understand property values,
Yeah.
but that's even excessive for most of the houses.
So we have 3 daughters. So there'll be, and then we're also, part of the house is building an in-law suite for my mother-in-law to move in with us. So it'll be a multi-generational home, so we need some additional parking because of it. And I'm also a bit of a car enthusiast, and frankly, just my passion would be to build this garage so that can be my little workshop. That little accessory structure that's kind of in the back, right underneath that big 90-inch in the back, I have a little wood shop and a little make shop back there. I like to do woodworking, going to architecture school, just like you mentioned you did. Kind of became a hobby of mine after grad school. So that's kind of what I'm looking for that spot to be, is my workshop.
I guess I'm a little confused as to, I mean, you've obviously put a lot of effort and time into
Couple
this
years,
design.
yes.
These 2 trees weren't moving, so you
They
went to a lot
weren't.
of trouble.
So I
with
guess
the
my answer
expectation.
to that would be, like I said, 3 years ago when those vines were growing up the tree and choking that out, we had an arborist come out and they did deem that tree hazardous. They said that if we cut the vines, they said there's a chance maybe that tree could come back, which is why we spent the money to have it cut. We did have it pruned, to your point, at that point, trying to save the tree, because we weren't planning on rebuilding. We were happy with this house. And unfortunately, just over time, the additional structural damage that this house has continued to incur, the cost that it would cost us to continue to deal with this in terms of the subfloor, in terms of the roof, in terms of the utilities that are now breaking, it gets to the point where the juice is no longer worth the squeeze.
No, I understand the
Yeah.
concerns about the structural
Yeah.
damage.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why you would go to such a huge undertaking and time and money to do these plans, just assuming that the trees were poof gonna disappear.
Well, I think, yeah, I don't think we assumed that. We actually changed the design quite a few times over this process. And one of the big changes that we made with this last iteration is we actually turned the garages so that they faced out, because we did try to pull the house forward because of some of the issues that we had with that 90-inch oak in the back, trying to save that and creating more green space back there. Our impervious coverage on this lot actually goes significantly down with the new house compared to what's there currently, because of getting rid of all those little single-story structures and back patios and shops and carports and all the little things that have been added over the last 60-some years for this property. So no, a lot of thought went into what's there, frankly. And that tree that you guys are mentioning that's on that northwest side, that we can sit there and argue whether this is a D tree or a C8 or a C7. That tree is not healthy, and it has not been doing well for a long time. And that is evident by coming to look at our property every single time a rainstorm comes by this. And if you looked at that roof, every week after a thunderstorm comes through, it is covered with branches and wood that's littered over. I blow it off every 2 weeks. So I would not consider that a healthy tree. So to me, to your point, we never looked at that as a healthy tree. In a perfect world, we'd be able to save the one that's in the middle. That's the big, beautiful one that we love. But unfortunately, that's the one that's in the worst location.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other?
Well, I really want to commend you for putting this whole thing together and being very thoughtful. As a realtor, I understand, because I understand what it can do to a home. I see it often. By the way, you closed on the 15th of October in 2014.
That might be the first time I've been right this year.
Well, I have access to the MLS, so and the fact that you've been in that property now for 10 years and you have dealt with this, and you have, I think, been good stewards to those trees and trying to keep them alive and trying to keep them healthy. And I really respect that you've gotten to the point that you've gotten at right now. And I think your presentation was very compelling.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other board questions? I'm sorry, I forgot where we are.
You're at the questioning phase.
Thank you. So, rebuttal?
Anything, Court?
No, I think I would just add, again, we bought this house, we love this neighborhood, we love these trees. when we bought it, our intention was not to ever tear down and build. But like Scott had mentioned, the issues that we've been having, even if we were to say, okay, we're just gonna sell it and we're gonna move elsewhere, these issues still have to be fixed. And by the time we fix them and we do them properly and we're raising the house, it's hurting these trees anyways, so it's not. We really have spent a lot of time looking at all of the options possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So thank you.
Close the public hearing and hear from the board.
Go ahead.
I feel very strongly about this.
About what?
Making a motion. All right, go for it. I'm gonna try it.
Go for it.
I'm gonna give it a whirl.
Okay.
We have
Bear
faith.
with me. This is scary.
This is your first one?
Yes.
Oh,
Do I
come
get something
on.
for this?
All right,
Okay.
here we go.
I move that the variance request for case VRB 24-34 for property located at 4514 West Watrous Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for removal of 2 grand trees, based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof that the trees would be rendered hazardous by proposed construction that cannot be reasonably reconfigured when considering the factors set forth in section 27-284.2.5F of the city code for grand tree removal. Specifically, that the evidence provided in the record and at this public hearing showed that the owners have attempted over the last 10 years to maintain the health of these trees. Thus, the building that they're currently in has suffered structural damage, damage to the roof, and ongoing damage to the utilities connected to the home, and that the proximity of the trees to the home is great cause for concern for safety of their family.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I can't support this, and I'm really disappointed that they went to the extreme of taking this house as far as they have with the assumption that, oops, the trees are just gonna disappear. I'm an architect, and I always, doesn't make us special, but it makes us, I think, more creative, I'd like to think.
I agree with that.
And the fact that it's just being, the house, no, sorry, closed. I'm just really disappointed. It's okay, because I'm only one vote, and I'm definitely not gonna support it. And I'm very, very, very disappointed that an architect would give up Grand Oaks for two-car garages. So I've said my piece. We can call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Okay, you've got your variance.
Thank you. I guess, one little comment, if that's
Nope.
okay, not,
Nope,
Okay.
all done.
okay.
So the next item on the agenda is VRB 24-35. The owner is George M. Jr. and Jennifer A. Joanne. The applicant is Charles Kitzmiller. The property address is 3216 West Pearl Avenue. The zoning is residential single family, RS 75. And the request is a reduction in the corner side yard from 15 feet to 11 foot 2 inches. And then to vest the existing front yard to 23 feet 9 inches. So the code section is 27-156, 4-2, schedule of area, height, bulk placement regulations of RS 75, district setbacks, 25 feet front setback, 12 foot rear corner, and 7 foot side, and 15 foot corner. So there's 2 corners because of how it's laid out, and we can talk about that. So this is the property in question. So I highlighted the 2 areas. The red is one request, and then the yellow is the other request. So just to kind of break it down, I know it looks a little messy here. So this is the red square. As you can see, they have a garage and a replacement bedroom that they're trying to do as an addition. And you can see right here is the 11-foot reduction from that corner.
So are you using your mouse on there? Or there?
Yeah, if you guys can see it. The cursor, yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay, thank
right
you.
So
here.
that's the corner.
Yeah, so this is the setback asking, that's requesting the reduction. So this is the red. And then this is the existing side. This side is not expanding, it's at 23 foot, 10 inches, when it should be at 25 foot.
So this is existing, or is this something?
This is already existing, permitted. The owner just wanted to get it cleared up. So when he got the permitting, it wouldn't raise a flag that the existing structure is within the 25-foot setback.
Makes sense.
Everybody found the project consistent with conditions. Natural Resources found it consistent with conditions, and that during the construction phase, additional requests regarding natural resources conditions may be required. Transportation found it consistent, but they will have to apply for a DET for the driveway depth due to the reduction in that setback. And then wastewater found it consistent, water found it consistent with conditions. And then they'll have to address the water-related issues. Right-of-way found it consistent, stormwater consistent, and then TECO found it consistent with conditions, and they attached the memo. This is the standard conditions for variances of this type, 27-80. And then if you guys approve this application, this standard condition will apply. The site will comply with Chapter 5, 17.5, 21, 22, 23, 26, all technical standards of the City of Tampa Code, and Chapter 27, unless specifically waived to this request. And I will be available for any questions.
Good evening, Charles Kitzmiller, 5823 Bowen Daniel Drive, Unit 401. I'm the architect for the project. The homeowners...
Were you sworn in?
Yes, I was sworn in.
Thank you.
The homeowners have owned this house. It was their first house after they got married. They've got 2 children now, and really need to get a second bathroom, for one thing, because it's one of those little 3 ones. And we had looked at alternate sites for this, however, for alternate number 1 coming from Sheridan, using this is the side yard. Pearl is the side yard. Sheridan is actually the front yard. Even though the house faces Pearl, because of the 90 versus the 94, this is considered the front yard. So in an R75 lot, the corner is the 15-foot setback. The other side is a 7-foot setback, and the rear is a 12-foot setback. So with R75, you give some and you get some back. But in this case, when the house was built, they just said, hey, the front's facing Pearl, and that's how we're going to build the house. So luckily, they're not too close on what is technically the front yard, and that's why we're vesting in the existing structure so that later on it can't be contested. So anyway, the alternate 1 does not leave enough space for a 2-car garage, given the 15-foot setback. Alternate number 2, we have an existing 18-inch live oak tree, and the tree lady's gone. So I mean, I thought I was going to get a yay from the tree lady, but anyway, what's in the tree protected root zone to add into onto the back. Alternate 3 would be a driveway from Pearl. There is another small elm tree, a 6-inch elm, but with the rear yard setback, we would not have space for the actual structure. And we had looked at maybe if there was an accessory structure possibility, but with RS75, there's the 10-foot eve to eve, and we've got our 5-foot utility easement here. Even if I had the 3-foot setback here, there's not enough space for a detached garage. The plan that we're proposing is building onto the Pearl Avenue side with the additional bedroom and bathroom, maintaining the corner yard setback, but the garage itself going into the setback. There's quite a large distance, 40 foot 7 inches from the proposed face of the structure to the edge of pavement. You can see here in an aerial that the existing house is actually set back from the common face of the houses facing Pearl. This is the tree that's preventing us to having the alternate number 2 This is the beautiful tree that's in the back corner, which actually the root zone prevents us from coming through here. And then this is the tree that's the elm tree in the front. That's preventing us from going back. Even if we were to go back there, there's not enough space to actually put a garage as an accessory structure or as part of the primary structure. So what we're asking for is a reduction in the corner side yard from 15 foot to 11 foot 2, and then to vest in the existing front yard setback in order so they can, you can look up and see when they bought the house, but this was their house when they got married, and you know, they've got kids now and they want to stay here. It's not in a floodplain, and they can afford to keep their house. And so that's, I would ask that you approve the variance.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone in the audience to speak? Seeing none. Questions from the board? Sorry, I have to ask that. Questions from the board?
No, I mean, it looks pretty good. You see, you're gonna have 40 feet after
From
the
the
addition?
from the actual front of the garage, the structure, we will have 40'7".
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm showing the covered porch there. You know, there is something in the code that says you can have a porch on a front yard, you know, an exception, but this is not considered the front yard. That's the side yard.
Yeah.
But it's the front of the house. So we want a little porch, you know. So.
We got it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
You get 5 minutes of rebuttal if you really
I have
feel
nothing to, but just a beg, you know.
Okay. Okay, so close the public hearing, and finally, one that I think makes sense. It's, you know,
Yeah.
odd-shaped lot, faces, you know.
This is why we're here.
This is,
Save the trees.
oh, thank you, sir.
Save the trees.
Yes,
Go for it.
we'll praise you. Since the tree lady left, we'll say thank you for it.
Yeah.
All right, for the, let's see, is it okay, board discussion? Are we in there?
Yeah, I think it's time for a motion. Go for
Okay.
it.
I move for the variance request for case VRB, did you get this right, 24-35, for property located at 3216 West Pearl Avenue, be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a, for a residential corner yards setback from 15 foot to 11 foot 2, and for to vest the existing front yard setback of 23 foot 9. Based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record for at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that it is a corner lot, that it's an existing building. The one is just making good on the existing houses there for a while, and the other one still leaves a 40-foot setback for a garage. This is an easy one.
Second.
Any questions? Okay. All in favor of the motion as stated signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed likewise?
Thank you. I want to compliment Stephen because I think what Mr. Granoff did was really, really horrible. And you do not say stuff like that about staff.
We appreciate
We
that.
agree. Yeah.
We agree.
Absolutely. Okay.
Uno.
Now for the last item on the hearing for cases, VRB 24-36. The owner is the Skill Group Center. The applicant is Keith Roberts. The property address is 5107 North 22nd Street, and the zoning is commercial intensive. The request for this one is for signage. It's for multiple signs. So I put it in very detailed for you guys to use if need be. This property is in an overlay that restricts the amount of signage down to 25 square feet for a building. So the request is broken into 3 parts, but it all falls under the same code section. So request 1 is on the west elevation. The request on the west elevation is to increase the size of the logo from 12 inches to 37 inches high by 61.4 inches totaling 15.8 square footage, and then an increase in size of letters from 12 inch to 24 inch high by 264 inches wide, totaling 45.3 square feet. So I'll get into the diagrams as well, because I know the measurements are a lot, especially when it's all in inches. So the combined increase of square footage of the signs on the west elevation will be 61.1 square feet. The north elevation sign, the request for the north elevation is to increase the number of signs from 1 sign to 2 signs. The detail for the 2 signs are as follows. Sign 1 on the north elevation would additionally increase the letter size from 25 square feet to 39.7 square feet, with the text height of 46.3 inches and a width of 123.4 inches. Sign 2 on the north elevation would increase from 25 square feet to 37.2 square feet, with the text height being a text height of 50.5 inches, not feet, by 106 inches. And then third, the request to increase the signs and sign allowance to greater than 25 square feet on the north and west elevations and allow 2 signs to the north. The code section and reference is section 27-240, 2F, general sign standards. Parcels permitted to have more than one building sign may not have those abut the corner of a building. A minimum separation of 10 feet shall be required for such signs. A minimum separation of 4 feet shall be maintained between signs on the same facade. No individual sign shall exceed 25 square feet, and text shall not exceed 12 inches in height. So this is a map of the site. It's it's zoned commercial intensive. So this is the proposed site and sign locations. So wall sign 1, you can see, is next to the basketball courts. It will be on that along North 22nd Street. And then wall sign 2 and 3 will be along East McBary Street. And then you can see that wall sign 1 and 2 are illuminated, wall sign 3 is not. So this is the one wall sign for the Suncoast Credit Union. And then this is the second sign. It was split to box out both parts of the sign. So that's why you have those 2 signs for the Skills Center. And then Natural Resources found a consistent transportation, has no objections to the request, but they were made aware that some stairs were shown in the right-of-way, so they can adjust that or obtain any approval, any right-of-way things for that, and same with right-of-way. And then Stormwater didn't take any action, and then TICO had no comment as of the 3rd of this month. And then this is your standard 27-80 for variances. And then they would have to meet the required conditions. The site shall comply with chapters 5, 17.5, 21, 22, 23, and 26, and all technical standards of the City of Tampa and chapter 27, unless waived specific to this request. Now I'll be available for any questions or concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Thank you for being very patient.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Kenneth Roberts. I'm at 4114 Carrollwood Village Drive, Tampa, 33618. I have not been sworn in.
You have not?
I have not. I got here a little late.
Do you swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. All right. So the Skills Center is a youth development organization. We were founded 15 years ago to provide youth development for kids in sports. We were fortunate enough to be able to receive a grant to build that building on 22nd, on 5107 North 22nd Street, to build a gym that fronts on 22nd Street. And the sheer size of that gym does not really give us, it gives us too much space to work with. So we looked at different iterations of signage, and all of which were really, really small, and you can barely make out on the west or the north elevations of the building what the sign says. So our request today is to increase the size by a little bit to make it a little bit more visible on the street, on the 22nd Street. And then on the north elevation, we request another sign to support one of our early supporters, Suncoast Credit Union. They were able to provide us with a substantial investment so that we can build the building. So we wanted to honor their investment by providing them with some signage. And thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
I have to ask anyone here to speak for or against. Obviously not. Board questions?
I wondered what that building was. I've passed by that building. Did you take on another building as well?
We did.
Like a.
Yes, so we kept the original building that was
I think
there.
I used to get my Christmas tree over there.
It was Christmas tree guy was there,
Oh my gosh,
and it was the Stardust skating rink.
Yes.
And
Okay.
before that, it was East Lake Bowling Alley. So we were able to renovate the building. We
It's
kept-
awesome.
Yeah.
As an architect, you would appreciate that we kept the original boat trust, and we designed the building around that.
Oh,
It's awesome.
I know, I looked through your presentation and I was very impressed.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's
Thank
great.
you. We tried to keep as much of the original building as possible, and it changed kind of how we had to design it by putting the gym up on 22nd Street. But we were pleased that it turned out very, very nice. And the community loves it so far.
Yeah.
We agree.
Can you just walk me through the sign locations again? So on 22nd Street, that's gonna be the Skill Center sign.
Just the Skill Center on 22nd Street.
And then on McBarry Street, you're gonna have one over in the corner, which is the credit union one, and then another Skill Center one in the middle?
In the middle,
Like just
directly
the
next to
logo,
the
the
door.
TSC in the middle?
Yes, sir.
Got you. Do you happen to know how far off McBarry Street that is?
I do not know the exact square footage from the street. It's probably closer to about 100 feet from McBarry
Gotcha.
to that door.
And the larger sign's the one that's gonna be on 22nd, which is the full Skills Center
Yes.
logo sign? Okay, perfect, thank you.
Rebuttal if you need. If not, we'll close the
No, thank you.
public hearing and hear from the board.
No, thank you.
I think it's an excellent solution.
Thank you.
Yeah, very well presented. Great use of the,
Yeah, very great, very good use of.
I think the fixed 25 feet is probably, did not have this type of structure in mind when they were,
you know, we've gotten some of those weird requests lately with the sign just, I mean, I'm usually not a fan of, you know, big signs, but some of these little ones just don't make sense, not if you wanna.
So far back off the street.
Yeah, well, you can't, if you're trying to direct people, it's not working. So, guys.
At least it's behind the shopping center too. And in front of.
That's true.
Middleton, in front of Middleton.
Yep,
So it's like,
You guys are already good.
you ready?
got it.
it is.
All right, I move that the variance request for case VRB 24-36 for property located at 5107 North 22nd Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing. 4A, west elevation sign with the request on the west elevation sign to increase from the size of the logo from 12 inches to 37 inches high by 61.4 inches, totaling 15.8 square feet. And increase the size of the letters from 12 inches high to 24 inches high by 264 inches wide, totaling 45.3 square feet. The combined increased square footage of the sign combination on the west elevation being 61.1 square feet. And then also the request for the north elevation to increase the number of signs from 1 sign to 2 signs. The detail for the 2 signs are as follows. Sign 1 on the north elevation would additionally increase the size of the sign from 25 square feet to 39.7 square feet with a text height of 46.3 inches and a width of 123.4 inches. The sign 2 on the north elevation would increase from 25 square feet to 37.2 square feet with a text height of 50.5 inches by 106 inches. And this request will increase the sign allowed to greater than 25 square feet on the north and west elevations and allow for 2 signs on the north elevation.
Second.
No, there's also a west elevation request.
Yes, the north and west elevation to allow for 2 signs on the north elevation. Are you talking about the last paragraph? that is including the west sign and the 2 signs on the north elevation.
Okay, all right.
Second.
Call question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed likewise? Pass, 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Okay.
being patient.
Yes.
Again.
Yes.
And thank you for what you do in the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was very entertaining.
Can we visit? Are we allowed to come visit?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, anytime.
I live down the street.
It's open to the public. We do, right now, we do pickleball.
Oh, my gosh.
Not there.
That's the thing, man.
That seems to be.
Indoor pickleball courts.
Oh,
Indoor too.
Okay.
they are calling your name. All right,
We just have one item left. We
Yes.
continued your rules of procedure.
Oh, that's right.
yes.
Oh,
I handed you the revised, rules of procedure.
Mm-hmm.
There was an error in the one that was emailed to you all, that I'm sure you all reviewed already. So,
Yes.
I caught that error and I deleted it, and the error was in, let me see what section it was in. I think it was on the number of applications, and that would have been on number, number 4.8, the agenda. That was incorrect. It had all the other boards. The purpose for updating these rules of procedure are for all of the boards to be consistent. So you're one of the last boards to approve the revised rules of procedure. If you want me to go over the significant changes, the different changes, I can definitely go over that. But it aligned with, it addresses continuances when there's a hurricane or a natural weather disaster. It gives a deadline on which you can approve or deny, deal with a deadline to deal with an application. It also gives further information regarding continuances and votes regarding certain matters and tie votes. Now, when there's a tie vote, if these rules of procedure are approved, the motion fails and the application shall be denied. So right now, you currently have a tie vote, it can continue to another agenda. But these rules of procedure are in line with other boards. Once your tie vote, once there's a motion that is tied, the application is denied, they'll have to redesign their project or readdress their variance request. But I went over these changes with staff, and obviously staff supports it, and I worked with them to revise the rules.
And we can have up to 13 applications in one meeting?
No, so, that's what I wanted to, you can have up to 13 applications. But luckily staff has not, you haven't had that number.
I've been,
Today was close.
yeah, back in the olden days, it was not unusual for us to go past midnight.
Right. So if the board, doesn't have any questions, I would ask there be a motion to approve the revised rules of procedure, so that can be reflected in the minutes.
So I motion to approve the revised rules of procedure for the Variance Review Board.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Oh,
She's happy.
yeah, I will not be here next month. And
So
we,
they will elect a chair pro tem to handle that when you're gone.
well, don't we need, can we
Oh,
elect a
if you
chair?
wanna do an election for a
I think we
vice
said
chair.
last
A
month we
vice
were
chair,
gonna
yeah,
do one.
we were
Oh,
gonna,
okay, I
yeah,
didn't realize
yeah,
you did
and
that.
I'd like to nominate Todd. Would you accept the nomination, sir?
For vice chair, sure.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other nominations for a vice chair?
Anyone else want it?
Todd.
I can't. I'm a alternate.
Okay.
Really? You can't?
Still an alternate for some reason. I haven't missed it.
Okay.
All
Well,
those in favor of the nomination?
aye,
Aye.
I vote for myself.
absolutely.
Thank you, you have a vice chair now.
Okay, and you can
Oh, I
take
get
over.
trial by fire next
Yeah,
week.
next month, because I will be in Chicago.
Close the
Well,
hearing.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
I hope so. It's a
Shut us down, Anna.
convention. Our
Yes,
meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
thank you.
And thank you for these lovely cards.